Chapter 341, Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian returned to Megrez Peak after leaving Megrez Hall, then he carefully arrived at the peak of the mountain before returning to the stalactite cave. The cultivation environment of the stalactite cave is even better than the environment on the 9 great spirit points. Even though I've become an inner court disciple now, there's still no need for me to find a cultivation location on Dubi Peak. Duan Lingtian thought inwardly before sitting on the stone platform, then began meditating and cultivating. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Worm Python Form. Although with his current strength Duan Lingtian could be called matchless under the nascent soul realm, he still didn't dare slack off. What he wanted to do now was to break through to the nascent soul stage as soon as possible. Duan Lingtian cultivated all the way until dawn the next day before walking out of the stalactite cave, then he stood on the tilted tree and bathed under the morning mist before leaping up the peak. After leaving the peak and arriving nearby the trade hall. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian noticed that at the same time that these Megrez Peak disciples greeted him, their gazes had an extra sense of adoration when they looked at him. What's going on? Is it just because of the incident during the inner court disciples test yesterday? Duan Lingtian was still wondering when a familiar voice sounded out by his ear. Duan Lingtian. He Dong. Duan Lingtian looked at the approaching person and lightly smiled. You're so early as well. The person that was approaching was precisely He Dong. Now, similar to him, He Dong ought to be preparing to head to the Dubi Peak's inner court disciples registration point to claim his inner court disciples attire. In next to no time, the two of them stepped onto the chain bridge together. Duan Lingtian, I heard you crippled the arm of the Peak Master's foster son, Wu Yongqian. Moreover, the Peak Master summoned you for an audience yesterday. The gaze He Dong shot at Duan Lingtian became even weirder. Duan Lingtian nodded. Duan Lingtian, I'm afraid that all the disciples of Megrez Peak have been completely won over by you now. You crippled the arm of the foster son of our Megrez Peak's master, yet you're still able to be safe and sound. You are absolutely the first person on Megrez Peak that was able to do that. He Dong gave Duan Lingtian a thumbs up as he expressed heartfelt admiration. Duan Lingtian's brows raised when he saw this. When he thought about the attitude of the group of Megrez Peak disciples from before, he came to a sudden understanding. So it's because of this incident. Dubi Peak's trade hall was situated at the top of Dubi Peak. When they came near the trade hall, Duan Lingtian was able to see numerous inner court disciples scattered around everywhere as they carried out various transactions. As expected, when he and He Dong approached the trade hall, they attracted the gazes of many inner court disciples. Outer court disciples. The gazes of some inner court disciples continuously followed Duan Lingtian and He Dong. When they saw Duan Lingtian and He Dong heading toward the inner court disciples registration point, they came to a sudden understanding. Looks like these two people are outer court disciples that passed the inner court disciple test yesterday. Suddenly, an inner court disciple seemed as if he'd discovered a new continent and his gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian. This outer court disciple is so young, he looks to only be a little over 20, could it be that he's Duan Lingtian? Duan Lingtian. As soon as the inner court disciple finished speaking, his words were like a stone that raised 1,000 ripples. It caused an uproar to break out amongst the group of inner court disciples. He's Duan Lingtian, the outer court disciple Duan Lingtian who's only 20 years old, yet his cultivation has stepped into the 8th level of the origin core stage. He's as young as the rumors say after all. I never expected that such an outstanding genius would appear in our 7-star sword sect. His natural talent in the martial Tao is simply more monstrous than the 5 great young masters. No one in our 7-star sword sect's younger generation is ranked amongst the 5 great young masters, and that has always been a regrettable matter. Duan Lingtian's appearance will perhaps cause the 5 great young masters to become the 6 great young masters. 6 great young masters. I can't wait. But, although Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Tao is good, his strength is still limited. He might only be able to contend with the 5 great young masters and fight for superiority with them after a few years. In next to no time, practically all the inner court disciples that were near the Dubi Peak's trade hall knew of Duan Lingtian's arrival. Many inner court disciples scrambled to head to the inner court disciple registration point, as they wanted to see the genius disciple that gave rise to so much discussion in the 7-star sword sect lately. At the side of the trade hall, 2 inner court disciples stood there together. Presently, the brows of one of the inner court disciples was knit together with a terrifyingly gloomy expression, and his eyes revealed dense hatred. This scene was noticed by the other inner court disciple, and he asked curiously, Fan Jian, you have enmity with Duan Lingtian. Big brother Lu, not only did Duan Lingtian humiliate me the other day, he even severed one of my fingers. Unfortunately, he has grown in strength too quickly and I'm not a match for him now. Otherwise, I'd surely teach him a lesson. Fan Jian took a deep breath, and as he finished speaking, his tone contained a sense of helplessness. Fan Jian, we were friends before entering the 7-Star Sword sect, and your clan and mine have been friends for generations. A problem of yours is my, Lu Shiji's, problem as well. Since Duan Lingtian has offended you, I'll stand out for you. The inner court disciple that spoke was a young man around the age of 28 or 29, and traces of gloominess flickered within his eyes. Thank you, big brother Lu. Fan Jian's eyes lit up and his expression was full of joy. Duan Lingtian and Hidong were both startled after they claimed their inner court disciple's attire and walked out of the registration point. Presently, the registration point was completely surrounded by people, and they were all inner court disciples. He's Duan Lingtian, he's so young, oh my god, when I was at this age, I think I was only at the second level of the origin core stage. Comparisons are truly odious. A figure whose natural talent in the martial Dao can compare to the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom has finally appeared in the younger generation of our 7-Star Sword sect. HMPH. Just the natural talent Duan Lingtian has revealed up until now has already completely surpassed the 5 great young masters. Duan Lingtian was stunned when he heard the whispered discussions of the crowd of inner court disciples. He understood now that the reason these inner court disciples had surrounded them was because of him. Duan Lingtian felt extremely uncomfortable being the center of attention for so many people. He frowned and bid his farewell to Hidong before walking out of the surrounding crowd. The inner court disciples opened up a path everywhere he passed. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to leave. Don't move. A cold and indifferent voice that had origin energy mixed within sounded like a thunderclap. The next moment, Duan Lingtian, who had stopped his footsteps, turned around and saw 2 inner court disciples walking towards him. He recognized one of them. It was the inner court disciple, Fan Jian, who desired to forcefully purchase the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse from him back in the restaurant in Black Bamboo City. It's Fan Jian again. Could it be that the lesson I taught him the other time wasn't enough? Duan Lingtian's face couldn't help but sink when he saw Fan Jian. 1 month ago, Fan Jian, who had just returned to the 7-Star Sword sect, had verbally humiliated Duan Lingtian. Out of respect for Elder Lu Chu, Duan Lingtian had only severed the Fan Jian's pinky, that was of no great importance to Fan Jian, as a form of punishment. He originally thought Fan Jian would learn his lesson, but now it would seem that the way Duan Lingtian thought was too simple. Fan Jian was like him name. Despicable. 1. Duan Lingtian was able to perceive that when Fan Jian and the inner court disciple by his side had walked over, the crowd of inner court disciples would follow to watch the excitement as well. Senior brother Lu Shizhe has enmity with Duan Lingtian. Probably not. According to my knowledge, Duan Lingtian severed Fan Jian's pinky with a swing of his sword last month. Senior brother Lu Shizhe probably wants to stand out for Fan Jian. I've heard that senior brother Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian have been extremely good friends since long ago. Looks like Duan Lingtian is going to suffer misfortune today. Yeah, although Duan Lingtian is an 8th level origin core stage martial artist, Lu Shizhe is a 1st level nascent soul stage martial artist, the difference between the two of them is like heaven and earth. Even if Duan Lingtian has a bizarre ability to defeat a stronger opponent with weaker strength, it's probably still difficult to surpass the gap between him and senior brother Lu Shizhe. The crowd of inner court disciples discussed animatedly. Lu Shizhe, 1st level of the nascent soul stage. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the inner court disciple by Fan Jian's side and his face sank. He wants to stand out for Fan Jian. Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian walked over shoulder to shoulder and quickly arrived before Duan Lingtian. A sense of arrogance was mixed between Lu Shiji's brows as he looked at Duan Lingtian with a condescending gaze and asked with a flat tone, "You're Duan Lingtian." But in the next moment, his face froze because Duan Lingtian didn't have any intention of paying him any attention at all. Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto Fan Jian, and his face sank slightly. Out of respect for Elder Lu Chu, I was willing to forget all grudges with you that day. What is the meaning of this? What's the meaning of this? With Lu Shizhe backing him up, Fan Jian was filled with confidence as he glared angrily at Duan Lingtian and sneered. Duan Lingtian, you crippled a finger of mine last month. There isn't even enough time for me to hate you, and you still want me to forget all the grudges with you. Do you think it's possible? Do you think I, Fan Jian, am so magnanimous? Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed into a line and a cold light flashed within. HMPH. Right at this moment, a cold snort sounded out and accompanying it was an awe-inspiring strong wind. Whoosh! A palm print condensed from origin energy suddenly whistled out as it flashed towards Duan Lingtian, causing Duan Lingtian, whose spiritual force that had only just become vigilant, to be caught off guard. The instant Duan Lingtian reacted to this attack, the palm print that was condensed from origin energy had already arrived before him, and his face went pale as he was utterly unable to dodge it. Earth Dragon's Shield. Duan Lingtian was only in time to circulate his defense martial skill in his quake energy. A layer of defensive chi barrier arose on the surface of Duan Lingtian's body and started vibrating violently with an extremely high frequency. Bang! The palm print that was condensed from origin energy descended onto Duan Lingtian's chest and the terrifying strength raged on him. After a short moment, it has shattered the Duan Lingtian's defensive chi barrier that contained the quake energy. Although half the strength contained within the palm print was resisted by the defensive chi barrier, the remaining power still fiercely smashed onto Duan Lingtian's chest, causing his internal organs to shudder. Pooh! Duan Lingtian felt an intense and burning pain from his chest and he couldn't refrain from spitting out a mouthful of blood, then his body flew out uncontrollably like an arrow leaving the bowstring and fiercely plunged to the ground. Bang! Duan Lingtian's body fell onto the ground and he felt a wave of dizziness that he only recovered from after a short while. Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian, whose face was ghastly pale, gazed at Lu Shizhe and the 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes above him that gradually dispersed, and Duan Lingtian's eyes revealed dense coldness. At this moment, the scene was deathly silent. 1 TL note. Fan Jian's name sounds similar to another phrase in Chinese which would mean to commit something despicable. Yes, I've explained this in CH 104, and the author reused this pun. 341 Chapter 342, Foreign Lands. All this happened within the blink of an eye. Everyone, including Duan Lingtian, never imagined that Lu Shizhe, who was a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple, would suddenly make a move against Duan Lingtian, who was an 8th-level origin core stage inner court disciple that had just entered the inner court. Not only that, but that he would use a surprise attack to heavily injure Duan Lingtian. Don reacted to the sudden turn of event and his face went grim, then his figure flashed to Duan Lingtian's side as he asked with deep concern. Duan Lingtian, are you alright? I'm fine. Duan Lingtian withdrew a grade 7 gold injury pill and consumed it, then he circulated his origin energy to dissolve the medicinal strength of the pill and his injuries recovered slightly. He stood up with great difficulty, but his face was still white as a sheet. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and his gaze descended onto Lu Shizhe, and within his gaze was awe-inspiring rage mixed within. What? Angry? Lu Shizhe started laughing as he walked to stand before Duan Lingtian with large strides, and his gaze went cold. You're just a kid who's just entered the inner court, but you actually arrogantly disregarded the question of me, this senior brother of the inner court. Today, I'll make sure to teach you a good lesson. So as to avoid you from relying on your natural talent and thinking that everyone should run circles around you. Lu Shizhe, right? Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Lu Shizhe, and the corners of his mouth curled into a cold and indifferent smile, and coupled with the blood on his mouth, his smile seemed incomparably evil. Exactly, I'm Lu Shizhe. Kid, I know your natural talent is good, but since you've entered the inner court, then you had better be well behaved before me, this inner court senior brother, in the future, do you understand? Lu Shizhe had a face full of arrogance. Suddenly, Lu Shizhe swung out his hand, once again attacking Duan Lingtian. 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes once again condensed into form above Lu Shizhe. Whoosh! This time, Duan Lingtian, who was prepared, swung the grade 7 spirit sword in his hand to flash out like lightning. Sword drawing arts. Quake energy. He desired to obstruct Lu Shizhe's palm strike that raged with origin energy. Negligible attack. In the next moment, Lu Shizhe's disdainful voice sounded out within Duan Lingtian's ears, and the grade 7 spirit sword in his hand shook before transmitting the shock to his palm. The palm strike of Lu Shizhe that contained the strength of 200 ancient mammoths completely disregarded Duan Lingtian's quake energy as it struck away his grade 7 spirit sword before once again imprinting itself onto Duan Lingtian's chest. Bang! The terrifying strength drained out from the fist and poured into Duan Lingtian's body. At the same time that Duan Lingtian was blasted flying once again, extremely intense pain once again descended, and it caused Duan Lingtian's consciousness to become fuzzy. Right before he fainted, Duan Lingtian heard two voices sound out by his ear. Duan Lingtian. One of the voices was the voice of Hidong. Stay your hand. The other voice seemed familiar, but Duan Lingtian wasn't able to recall it for some time. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian completely lost consciousness. When Duan Lingtian regained his consciousness and opened his eyes, he noticed that he was laying on a soft bed. Ah, so painful. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian felt the intense pain that came from his chest. Duan Lingtian viewed himself internally and noticed that the injuries of his internal organs had already completely recovered, and his chest bones that were cracked open were already almost healed. A grade 7 gold injury pill doesn't have this level of medicinal strength. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked, as he who possessed the lifetime worth of memories of the rebirth martial emperor understood the grade 7 gold injury pill extremely well. Based on his injuries, even if he consumed a grade 7 gold injury pill, it would be impossible to recover to this extent without a few months' worth of time. Duan Lingtian naturally wouldn't think that he'd been laying here for a few months. It's a grade 6 great recovery pill. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed a trace of medicinal strength that remained within his body, and it was the medicinal strength that belonged to a grade 6 great recovery pill. What is this place? After recovering from his shock, Duan Lingtian sized up this clean and tidy room. There wasn't many decorations or furniture in the room, yet all the furniture that could be found within it was practical. Suddenly, seeming to have noticed something, Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted. Spirit point. This place is a spirit point. Duan Lingtian noticed the rhythmic movement of the origin energy within his body, and the feeling this place gave him was exactly similar to the feeling he had at Mizar Hall and Megrez Hall that day. Mizar Hall and Megrez Hall were both situated atop the spirit point on the main peak of the 7-star sword sect, Dubi Peak, and the cultivation environment there was superb. Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian's eyes emitted a frightful cold light when he recalled the scene from before he fainted, and killing intent arose within his heart. Lu Shizhe relied on the fact that he was a first-level nascent soul-stage martial artist to attack Duan Lingtian twice, and the viciousness of his attacks caused chills to run down one's spine. I'll return it to you double. Traces of coldness arose within Duan Lingtian's heart as he established this awe-inspiring vow. What the heck is this place? Duan Lingtian suppressed the rage within his heart and got off the bed, then he opened the room door. You're awake. At that moment, a familiar voice sounded out from nearby. Duan Lingtian glanced over and saw a large pavilion on the right, at the end of the pathway outside the room, and a middle-aged man was standing there with his back towards Duan Lingtian. Although he didn't turn around, he still seemed to be able to notice Duan Lingtian's movement. Duan Lingtian left the room and walked up the pavilion before greeting the middle-aged man who had his back towards Duan Lingtian, Peak Master. I heard from Song that you were injured by a first-level nascent soul-stage inner court disciple. You have a grudge with him. The middle-aged man turned around to reveal his face. It was precisely the Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Therefore, the place Duan Lingtian was at now was precisely Mizar Hall, the place where one of the 9 great spirit points on the 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak was located. So it's senior brother Zheng Song that saved me. Duan Lingtian thought inwardly. He finally recalled it, and he understood why the other voice he heard before he fainted was slightly familiar. So it turned out that the owner of that voice was the son of Mizar Peak's Peak Master, Zheng Song. I didn't have any grudges with him, and I only have some conflicts with the other inner court disciple that was by his side. However, after today, the enmity between me and him is deep. As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, traces of cold lights flashed within his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a ghastly sneer. He would return what Lu Shizhe gave him twofold. After he calmed down his mood, Duan Lingtian looked at Zheng Fan and asked. Peak Master, you gave me a grade 6 great recovery pill. Zheng Fan nodded. I saw that your injuries weren't light. If you only consumed a grade 7 gold injury pill, then even if it was able to heal you, it would probably take a few months, so, I gave you a grade 6 great recovery pill to allow your injuries to recover in a short amount of time. Duan Lingtian had a serious expression as he said, I, Duan Lingtian, will remember this kindness of Peak Master in my heart. What is a grade 6 great recovery pill compared to the great favor you gave me? Zheng Fan shook his head and smiled, then he sat down at the nearby table and fiddled with the tea set. You've been knocked out for a few hours and have only just awoken. I presume your spirit is tired. Accompany me and drink a few cups of cloud rice tea to recover your spirit as soon as possible. Thank you, Peak Master. Duan Lingtian sat down and looked at the sky. The burning sun was currently hung high in the sky, currently at high noon. Zheng Fan poured a cup of cloud rice tea for Duan Lingtian, then asked with a slight smile, Duan Lingtian, what do you plan to do in the future? Duan Lingtian took a sip of the cloud rice tea, and his spirit was refreshed before slowly saying, I temporarily don't have a specific plan, but, in the future, I should be going to the foreign lands to have a look. Foreign lands? Zheng Fan shuddered when he heard Duan Lingtian, and the teacup in his hand nearly fell down. Zheng Fan shook his head and sighed with emotion. Duan Lingtian, I truly never imagined that your aspirations would be so great. The foreign lands are something that even I have not thought about for now. Supposedly, many void transformation stage existences are present at the central area of the foreign lands. As he finished speaking, Zheng Fan had a slight lingering fear in his heart. Experts were numerous like the clouds in the foreign lands, and it also meant that death was at every corner. Without a certain level of strength, he completely didn't dare to wander about in the foreign lands. Peak Master, sometimes, placing your target slightly further will perhaps allow you to go even further on the path of the martial Tao. Otherwise, if you only realize you're like a frog living at the bottom of a well during your old age and when time has slipped away, wouldn't it be too late? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, as he made nothing of what Zheng Fan said. In the eyes of others, the foreign lands might be a dreadful monster. But in the eyes of Duan Lingtian, who'd merged with the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, it was only an even vaster world. In the foreign lands, void-prying stage martial artists could be seen everywhere, and void initiation stage martial artists were extremely numerous. Placing my target slightly further will perhaps allow me to go even further on the path of the martial Tao. A frog living at the bottom of a well. Zheng Fan went silent after hearing what Duan Lingtian said. Zheng Fan only recovered from his state of pondering after a long time, then looked at Duan Lingtian and sighed with emotion. Duan Lingtian, I've still underestimated you. No wonder you're able to possess such accomplishments at such a young age. Your martial will and heart of the strong is something that causes even I, the Peak Master of Mizar Peak, to feel ashamed from my inferiority. I'm slightly looking forward to it now. What sort of heights will you attain in another 10 years? What I can be sure of is at that time, you will surely have a strength that surpassed me. The way Zheng Fan spoke showed how extremely highly he looked upon Duan Lingtian. Peak Master, you're too kind. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, but his eyes revealed a wisp of confidence. Another 10 years. At that time, he might already be wandering about in the foreign lands. After drinking a few cups of cloud rice tea, Duan Lingtian stood up and lightly smiled at Zheng Fan. Peak Master, if there's nothing else, then I'll be returning first. Please pass my gratitude to senior brother Zheng Song, and I, Duan Lingtian, will remember this favor of his. Zheng Fan nodded. Go ahead. Duan Lingtian turned around, then stepped off the pavilion to descend onto the vast platform outside Mizar Hall, then his body flashed out towards the distance. Perhaps, my biggest accomplishment in this lifetime will be getting on friendly terms with this little fellow. Zheng Fan looked at Duan Lingtian's disappearing figure and only came back to his senses after Duan Lingtian's figure had completely vanished before his eyes, then he shook his head and smiled. So long as he's able to mature safely, his future isn't something I'm able to imagine. This piece of good karma would even be able to allow me to enjoy its benefit for my entire lifetime. After many years, Zheng Fan would realize that the way he thought right now would be so true, and what foresight his thoughts possessed. 342 Chapter 343, Kill the Weed by the Roots. After Duan Lingtian left Mizar Hall, he headed down Dubi Peak. His eyes seemed calm, but in actuality, they contained killing intent concealed within. Lu Shizhe, suddenly, Duan Lingtian's face became gloomy, like it was covered in a layer of thin ice, and he gave off an oppressively cold air. He deeply remembered this name in his heart. Even though he could challenge Lu Shizhe to a battle in the life and death arena right now and use an offensive inscription to directly kill him, Duan Lingtian didn't want to do this. To a certain extent, an inscription was comparable to a cheating device, and it was easy to kill Lu Shizhe with an inscription, yet it was difficult for it to help him vent the hatred in his heart. He wanted to use the true strength that belonged to him to destroy Lu Shiji's confidence, and make Lu Shizhe regret all he had done today. This was his arrogance. He would climb up from where he fell. This was a man, a true man. After Duan Lingtian left Dubi Peak, he returned directly to Megrez Peak, then carefully circled around for half an hour before returning to the stalactite cave at the side of the mountain peak to calm his heart and cultivate. Duan Lingtian cultivated within the stalactite cave for the next 2 months. When he was hungry, he would directly roast some meat. When he had eaten his fill, he would continue cultivating, regardless of if it was day or night. Time flew swiftly by. 2 months was neither long nor short, but it had passed just like that. 2 months later, Duan Lingtian left the stalactite cave and spent a day's time to prepare everything he needed to do before heading to Alcade Peak. Elder Bai. When Duan Lingtian went to look for Li Fei, Elder Bai just happened to be present as well. Scoundrel. Li Fei had a face full of joy as she walked out of the wooden house after hearing Duan Lingtian's voice. Elder Bai nodded to Duan Lingtian. Fei has told me everything that should be told. I want you to guarantee that Fei will be safe and sound when you return, otherwise, I won't let you off. As she finished speaking, Elder Bai's gaze became fierce. Duan Lingtian didn't get angry, as he knew that Elder Bai was just being concerned for Li Fei, and he lightly smiled. Don't worry, Elder Bai, you know the relationship between little Fei and me. Unless I die, otherwise, it's impossible that I would allow her to suffer any injury. Only now did Elder Bai nod in satisfaction and leave. Scoundrel, don't mind what Master said. After Elder Bai left, Li Fei smiled apologetically to Duan Lingtian. Little Fei, is this how you see your man? Not to mention Elder Bai is your master, but just what Elder Bai earlier is also because of her being concerned about you. I haven't even gotten the chance to be happy because she's so good to you, why would I mind? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Are you ready? Yes. Li Fei nodded excitedly and felt a wave of happiness in her heart when she thought of how she was about to leave the 7-star sword sect. Then let's go now. Do you need to bid farewell to senior sister Zuo Qing? Duan Lingtian asked. He'd come to Alcade Peak precisely to get Li Fei and leave together. I've already spoken to senior sister. Li Fei lightly shook her head, then said, I wonder if little sister Kair has returned. Let's go to Alcade Hall and take a look. Alcade Hall was the place on Dubi Peak where the Peak Master of Alcade Peak cultivated. There's no need. Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly as he shook his head. I went to Dubi Peak yesterday and went to Alcade Peak in passing. Kair and her master haven't returned, I wonder where they've gone. They still haven't returned after so long. As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian was slightly worried. Li Fei noticed that Duan Lingtian was worried about Kair and she consoled him. Don't worry. According to my master, the Peak Master of our Alcade Peak is a void initiation stage expert. With her by Kair's side, Kair will be fine. Duan Lingtian nodded. In the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, there were few people able to threaten Kair's safety while she possessed the protection of a void initiation stage expert. Let's go. Duan Lingtian called out at Li Fei before directly leaving Alcade Peak. As they walked on the chain bridge, Li Fei said with a smile, Scoundrel, I saw the gazes of the other sisters of Alcade Peak earlier seemed as if they wished for nothing more than to eat you up, besides that, many of them looked at me with gazes of envy and jealousy. As she finished speaking, Li Fei seemed slightly complacent, and as she held onto Duan Lingtian's arm, a smile that could overthrow the world appeared on her face. Duan Lingtian laughed bitterly. Little Fei, didn't you love to get jealous before this? You aren't jealous now. What is there to get jealous about? Li Fei said with a smile, there's nothing between you and them, moreover, doesn't my man being so welcomed also show that I have good taste? You have good taste, Duan Lingtian muttered to himself when he heard Li Fei. It seems that it was I who took the initiative to pursue you at that time. Scoundrel, what did you say? Li Fei heard Duan Lingtian's mutters, and stared at Duan Lingtian with a faint smile on her face. No, nothing. Duan Lingtian hurriedly shook his head, as he'd already felt Li Fei's hand being placed on his waist. If he were to dare speak carelessly, he didn't doubt it in the slightest that his waist would instantly suffer extremely brutal devastation. After Duan Lingtian and Li Fei arrived at Dubi Peak, they headed down the mountain. All along the way, the 7-star sword sect disciples looked at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei with gazes filled with jealousy and envy. The male disciples were jealous and envious of Duan Lingtian. The female disciples were instead jealous and envious of Li Fei. Before long, Duan Lingtian and Li Fei had arrived the stables near the entrance to the 7-star sword sect, intending to get their horses. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei had only just entered the stable when a figure dashed nimbly towards them, then stopped before Duan Lingtian with an expression of excitement. Mo Yu. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile to the outer court disciple that was of a similar age to him. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, this is. Mo Yu had an expression of joy that Duan Lingtian was still able to remember him. Before long, his gaze descended onto Li Fei, and he was stunned briefly before withdrawing his gaze of astonishment, not daring to take another glance. He was able to discern that this was senior brother Duan Lingtian's woman. This is my woman, you can call her senior sister Li Fei. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile to Mo Yu, then he introduced him to Li Fei. Little Fei, this is Mo Yu. Our Fergana horses were taken care of by him all this time. Mo Yu, you haven't been lazy recently, right? As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian looked at Mo Yu again. Don't worry senior brother Duan Lingtian, I've practically taken the Fergana horses of you and senior sister Li Fei for a walk every day, and they have become much sturdier. Mo Yu laughed. Li Fei lightly smiled to Mo Yu, causing Mo Yu to be stunned from the sight. When had he seen such an extraordinary beauty? Mo Yu only came back to his senses when Duan Lingtian lightly coughed, and his face flushed. His embarrassed appearance caused Duan Lingtian and Li Fei to be unable to restrain their laughter. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian and Li Fei saw their Fergana horses, and they had indeed become much sturdier. The two of them leapt onto their horses and nodded to Mo Yu before controlling their horses to leave. Only senior brother Duan Lingtian, such an outstanding genius martial artist, is able to match such a drop-dead gorgeous beauty like senior sister Li Fei. As he gazed at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei's figures that galloped into the distance, Mo Yu's gaze gradually became firm as he silently said to himself, Mo Yu, you have to work hard. Senior brother Duan Lingtian is the target you strive for, you don't have to be as outstanding as senior brother Duan Lingtian. Even if you only achieve half of what senior brother Duan Lingtian has achieved, your life wouldn't have been lived for nothing. At this moment, Mo Yu's martial will was tenacious like never before. In the future, when Mo Yu had achieved success and won recognition, the person he felt grateful to the most when he recalled everything in the past was still the senior brother Duan Lingtian, who was like a lantern in the night, guiding him onto the path. This was something that even Duan Lingtian himself had never expected. He hadn't done anything but remember a name, yet he'd affected the life of an outer court disciple that had taken the position of horsekeeper within the 7-star sword sect. Swoosh! A figure that dashed like the wind was incomparably fast as the figure passed through the sect gate and flashed out, aiming straight for the two Fergana horses that were galloping in the distance. The figure's target was obviously the people atop the Fergana horse. Void prying stage expert. The 7-star sword sect disciples that guarded the gates were stunned when they saw the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes above the figure that flashed by. Wasn't this the sigh of a first-level void prying stage expert? I've finally found an opportunity, Duan Lingtian. This time, let me see how you escape from my hands. The person that dashed out laughed with a voice that was filled with excitement and unscrupulousness. At the same time, near the Dubi Peak test platform. Whoosh! Another figure flashed out, its destination aiming straight for the foot of Dubi Peak. Above this figure, 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form. First level of the nascent soul stage. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a figure that was even faster had flashed out, and in the blink of an eye, the second figure had surpassed the first and obstructed the former's path. At the same time this second figure dashed out, 300 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared above him. Second level of the nascent soul stage. The first figure stopped dead in his tracks and focused his eyes to gaze over, and his face sank when he saw the person who had obstructed his path. Zheng Song, it's you again. I won't fuss with you about the fact that you took that Duan Lingtian away the other day. Why are you obstructing my path today? Lu Shizhe, are you mistaken? How am I obstructing your path? This is Dubi Peak, it's part of the 7-star sword sect, and it isn't your house. I'll walk however I wish, what does it have to do with you? Zheng Song looked at the person before him and smiled indifferently. Zheng Song, do you have to make it difficult for me? Lu Shiji's face sank. He understood in his heart that this Zheng Song probably already knew of his intentions. Otherwise, Zheng Song wouldn't obstruct his path. He'd waited for 2 months and had finally found such a good opportunity to kill the weed by the roots. Now, his heart was filled with grievance as he noticed that his plans were about to be destroyed by Zheng Song. At the start on that day, he'd only humiliated Duan Lingtian for the sake of standing out for Fan Jian. After that, when he thought about it, and thought of Duan Lingtian's monstrous and matchless natural talent, an intent to kill the weed by the roots had arisen within his heart. From that time onwards, he's always been looking for an opportunity. Today, with great difficulty, he'd received the news that Duan Lingtian had left the Seven-Star Sword sect, and he didn't dare dally for a moment as he flashed down Dubi Peak, all for the sake of catching up to Duan Lingtian and killing him to avoid any future troubles. Unexpectedly, an unwelcome busybody had showed up to obstruct his path. 343 Chapter 344, Ancient City of Everlast. Make it difficult for you. Zheng Song couldn't help but laugh when he heard Lu Shizhe, then he swept Lu Shizhe with his indifferent gaze. Lu Shizhe, you seem to think too highly of yourself. Do you think you're worthy? Lu Shizhe took a deep breath and slowly suppressed the rage in his heart. The person before him was far from something Duan Lingtian could compare to. Moreover, not to mention Zheng Song's own strength was much more formidable than his. Zheng Song's father was even the peak master of Mizar Peak. An existence that even the clan behind him was unable to offend. Since you aren't making it difficult for me, then it couldn't be better. Lu Shiji's figure flashed out, wanting to go around Zheng Song and head down Dubi Peak. Unexpectedly, Zheng Song's figure flashed out to follow him like a shadow, causing him to be unable to move a single inch. Zheng Song, don't go too far. Lu Shizhe was eventually unable to endure it any longer, and his eyes squinted as he glared at Zheng Song. He wasn't willing to miss this chance to kill Duan Lingtian, as once he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when the next time he would find such a good opportunity would be. With Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao, once Duan Lingtian matured in the future, surpassing him was only a matter of time. He could imagine that when Duan Lingtian had grown to a point that had surpassed him, Duan Lingtian would surely seek revenge. At that time, he would be completely in a passive position. So, he had to kill Duan Lingtian before he was able to grow, because only in this way would he be able to wipe off any future trouble and allow himself to have no worries. What, Lu Shizhe, you want to fight me? Zheng Song's eyes squinted as he glared at Lu Shizhe with a faint smile on his face. From beginning until the end, his expression was calm, as if he didn't take Lu Shizhe seriously at all. Zheng Song, Lu Shizhe, will remember today's incident. When he realized it would be impossible for him to pursue Duan Lingtian and kill the weed by the roots today, Lu Shizhe gritted his teeth as he left some words of retaliation before turning around and heading up Dubi Peak. The disdain appeared on the corners of Zheng Song's mouth as he gazed at Lu Shiji's disappearing figure. Outside the Seven-Star Sword sect, towards the direction heading to Black Bamboo City. The figure that dashed like the wind seemed to have transformed into a gale as it swept towards the two Fergana horses that were galloping at full speed. This person that was swiftly flying forward was a middle-aged man, and as he dashed forward, 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes seemed to condense into form above him. His cultivation was extremely obvious. First level of the void-prying stage. A wisp of a complacent smile appeared on the corners of the middle-aged man's mouth when he saw the Fergana horses getting closer and closer, his eyes revealing a burning desire. The muscle meridian rebirth scroll is mine. However, in the next moment, the smile that had only just appeared on the corners of the middle-aged man's mouth had frozen. It was only because an even swifter sound of wind sounded out in his ears, and before he could even react to it, he'd noticed that a figure had surpassed him in the blink of an eye, and the figure stopped in the distance. Although he was shocked by this person's cultivation, the middle-aged man had no intention of paying any attention to the person. His figure flashed, intending to go around this person. Zhao Lin. Right at this moment, a voice that was like a thunderclap and contained thick origin energy mixed within it had pierced into Zhao Lin's ears, causing the vital energy and blood in Zhao Lin's body to roil, and Zhao Lin didn't dare continue dashing forward. After Zhao Lin stopped, he was only able to ease up his trembling internal organs slightly after taking a deep breath. Zhao Lin gazed in terror at the person who had his back towards him. Who are you? Finally, the person who had his back towards Zhao Lin slowly turned around, revealing his real appearance. It's you. Zhao Lin's face went grim when he saw the appearance of the person, as he'd never imagined that the person who would obstruct him would be this person. The Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Peak Master Zheng Fan, what is the meaning of this? Zhao Lin's face sank and he spoke with a questioning tone. Zhao Lin, the outer court disciple of Megrez Peak, wasn't afraid in the slightest when facing the Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Zheng Fan glanced at Zhao Lin with a calm gaze as he slowly said, Elder Zhao Lin, please go back. Zheng Fan, are you hell-bent on interfering in my matters? Zhao Lin looked at Zheng Fan and directly addressed Zheng Fan by name, and a fierce light flickered in his eyes as he said in a deep voice, Zheng Fan, don't forget who my grandfather is. Ha ha, Zheng Fan couldn't refrain from laughing when he heard Zhao Lin. Elder Zhao Lin, I'm extremely curious, do you dare tell Elder Ming of your current actions? Zhao Lin's face went grim as his weak point was grabbed by Zheng Fan and he was slightly angry from embarrassment. Zheng Fan looked at the direction of Dubi Peak as he slowly said, Elder Zhao Lin, please. Zhao Lin's gaze descended into the distance, and those two Fergana horses had already completely vanished from his field of vision. He understood in his heart that now, not to mention Zheng Fan interfering in this matter, even if Zheng Fan wasn't interfering, he still might not be able to catch up to his target. HMPH. Zhao Lin coldly swept Zheng Fan with his gaze, then turned around and headed back towards the 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak. Zheng Fan followed him and flowing lights flashed within Zheng Fan's eyes. His thoughts seemed as if it had returned to yesterday. Peak Master, I have something that I want to ask for your help with. Speak, so long as it's within my ability, then I absolutely won't refuse. I intend to leave the 7-star sword sect tomorrow, but I'm worried that someone will want to harm me. I hope that Peak Master is able to help me leave safely. Duan Ling Tian owes Peak Master a debt of gratitude. It's only a small matter, I agree to your request. Thank you, Peak Master. Flowing lights flashed within Zheng Fan's eyes and his heart was filled with wonder. How the heck did that little fellow offend Zhao Lin? Zhao Lin was only a first-level void-prying stage outer court elder, and he thought nothing of Zhao Lin. However, the person behind Zhao Lin was someone that even he who had already broken through to the void initiation stage now, and him he still felt reverence and fear towards. Go, Duan Ling Tian and Li Fei were side by side as they spurred their Fergana horses forward, quickly arriving at Black Bamboo City to meet up with Shang Quan. After they changed into casual clothes, they were prepared to head towards the location of Solitary Summit. The Solitary Summit was extremely far away from the 7-star sword sect, and this time Duan Ling Tian had made sufficient preparations to make a long journey. According to Shang Quan, it would require spending almost 5 months to arrive at Solitary Summit from here. In other words, it would be nearly 1 year for a return journey. Of course, this was only the time estimated by Shang Quan. When Duan Ling Tian's group of 3 spurred their horses to gallop violently and endured the hardships of an arduous journey, it had only been 4 months when they arrived nearby Solitary Summit. Shang Quan, how far is Solitary Summit from here? After hurrying along on their journey for 4 months, Duan Ling Tian was worn out from the journey, and slight exhaustion was mixed within between his brows. He hadn't rested properly throughout these 4 months. He'd cultivated as they hurried on their journey. At the same time that a Fergana horse was extremely swift when traveling, it was also extremely stable. So it didn't stop Duan Ling Tian from cultivating while traveling. Shang Quan gazed at the surroundings and said slowly, Young master, we'll be there soon. It's at most another half-day's ride away. Although Shang Quan had traveled for 4 months as well, he was still brimming with energy and vitality. This was something that was entirely different from Duan Ling Tian. Of course, all of this was because of Shang Quan's deep cultivation. Moreover, during the journey, Shang Quan's cultivation that had recovered to the 6th level of the void-prying stage had broken through once again, and he'd officially stepped into the ranks of the 7th level of the void-prying stage. Duan Ling Tian nodded, then looked at Li Fei who was beside him and equally exhausted. Little Fei, endure it for a little while longer. We'll soon be able to rest. Scoundrel, I'm fine. Li Fei nodded with a strong expression, and it caused Duan Ling Tian's heart to ache slightly. He even slightly regretted bringing Li Fei along. Even though all the bandits they'd encountered on the way during these 4 months had been killed by Shang Quan and there was no need for them to worry about it, but because of the long-term accumulation of the lack of rest, it had caused Duan Ling Tian's and Li Fei's bodies and minds to be exhausted. Fortunately, Li Fei's cultivation had broken through on the way, otherwise, she might not have been able to persist until now. Li Fei's cultivation had broken through, and Duan Ling Tian's cultivation had similarly broken through as well. Cultivating and traveling day and night all along the way had allowed Duan Ling Tian's cultivation to smoothly break through to the 8th level of the origin core stage. At the same time that they continued on their journey, Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Even if I don't utilize a spirit weapon now, My strength is comparable to the strength of 121 ancient mammoths, and I'm already stronger than ordinary 9th level origin core stage martial artists. Ordinary 9th level origin core stage martial artists only have the strength of 120 ancient mammoths. Moreover, along with my breakthrough to the 8th level of the origin core stage, the quake energy has broken through again. The current quake energy's scope of effect has increased to the strength of 70 ancient mammoths. As he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian experienced a wave of excitement. However, I'm currently still inferior to that Lu Shizhe. In next to no time, the excitement on Duan Lingtian's face vanished, as if he was splashed with a bucket of cold water, and his eyes flickered with an icy cold brilliance. Lu Shizhe, first level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. At full strength, Lu Shizhe's strength was comparable to the strength of 200 ancient mammoths. If Lu Shizhe were to utilize his spirit sword, then his strength would be even more formidable. Scoundrel, what are you thinking of? Suddenly, Li Fei's voice that was pleasant to the ear resounded, causing Duan Lingtian to return to his senses. Nothing. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, the icy coldness within his eyes instantly vanishing without a trace. He didn't tell Li Fei about the matter with Lu Shizhe as he was afraid that Li Fei would be worried. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 once again traveled for half a day. They traveled until the scorching sun was setting in the west, and only then did they see a dangerously steep mountain that was like a pillar that held up the heavens in the distance. This mountain shot up directly into the clouds, and it caused one to be unable to help from being shocked when one laid eyes upon it. Young master, that mountain is the solitary summit, Shangquan said to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded, and his gaze slightly moved downwards to descend into the distance. In the distance, a vast and magnificent ancient city rose up from the ground within this desert, like an enormous beast that was dormant there, stunning the hearts of everyone. Shangquan, what city is this? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Li Fei's beautiful eyes moved slightly, and her gaze descended onto the ancient city in the distance. Young master, this is the ancient city of Everlast. Shangquan replied respectfully. The ancient city of Everlast is the city within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that possesses the longest history. Allegedly, this ancient city already stood within this vast desert before the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom even existed. 344 Chapter 345, Beautiful Manager. Ancient City of Everlast. Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up as he looked at the unending streams of people, horses, and carriages. He asked curiously, this ancient city of Everlast looks like it's rather bustling, is there something special about it? An ancient city that was established in the middle of the desert and was near the solitary summit was actually able to attract so many merchants, and this caused Duan Lingtian's heart to be filled with curiosity. Young master, the ancient city of Everlast can be said to be the largest trade city within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. All the businesses within this city were born for the sake of profit. Unlike ordinary cities, there aren't any courtyard houses that are specially provided for people to stay in. If one isn't someone who's doing business here, then one can only stay within the inns here. Shangquan continued. The largest trade city in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Duan Lingtian felt it was slightly difficult to believe. A city established in such a bleak and desolate place actually has such a great background. Young master, there's this saying that's been spread within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. If you want to acquire a certain thing you want, if the ancient city of Everlast doesn't have it, then it's impossible to encounter it in any other place within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Shangquan said slowly. Now that you put it like this, I'm interested in this city. We'll find an inn to stay in for the night and properly experience the local customs and practices here. We'll head up the solitary summit another day. It wasn't easy to finally be able to make a trip out of the 7-star sword sect, and Duan Lingtian intended to take Li Fei on a nice tour of the city, as he couldn't just finish what he'd come for and directly return. If he did it like that, it would be too uninteresting. Li Fei's beautiful eyes lit up when she heard Duan Lingtian, as similarly to Duan Lingtian, she was filled with curiosity and yearning towards this ancient city. Young master, Shangquan warned Duan Lingtian when he saw they were about to enter the ancient city. Experts are numerous like the clouds within the ancient city of Everlast. Even an inconspicuous man on the road could very likely be a void stage expert, coupled with this place being extremely far from the imperial city, and that it is considered a no man's land. Bloody slaughters often occur here. Within the ancient city of Everlast, martial artists without a certain level of strength are only able to tuck their tails between their legs and behave themselves, as they're extremely afraid of courting disaster. Duan Lingtian nodded and his expression became slightly serious. This ancient city of Everlast couldn't be looked at like how he looked at other ordinary cities. Li Fei withdrew a veil when they had almost reached the ancient city of Everlast, and only then did she spur her horse to enter the ancient city with Duan Lingtian and Shang Quan. As soon as they entered the ancient city, they could feel the dense aura of a market assaulting their faces. On the street within the ancient city, carriages and horses were like long dragons that flowed in endless streams, and the city was extremely bustling. Many stalls were laid out on both sides of the street, and these stalls either sold medicinal pills, spirit weapons, or various materials. There were youths, young men, middle-aged men, and even old men that were the owners of these stalls. Duan Lingtian spread out his spiritual force as he spurred his horse forward. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. His gaze descended onto the owner of a nearby stall. This was a hunchbacked old man who was standing behind the stall and bargaining with another. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime worth of experience of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian was able to confirm that this hunchbacked old man was a void-prying stage martial artist, and the old man's strength ought to be at the second level of the void-prying stage. Looks like what Shang Quan said earlier wasn't wrong at all. Within this ancient city of Everlast, any person on the street might be a void stage expert. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and became slightly vigilant. Scoundrel, how about we stay at that inn? Look, there's even a restaurant opposite the inn. When they passed a corner, the eyes of Li Fei, who had a sharp gaze, suddenly lit up as she looked into the distance. Duan Lingtian followed Li Fei's gaze to look over when he heard her. An ancient styled inn appeared before his eyes. Beside the inn, a restaurant silently stood there. This restaurant was extremely special, as it was quiet and elegant. The first floor of the restaurant had been completely emptied, and it was filled with various plants that were placed in a circle, causing one to feel extremely comfortable when gazing upon it. Whereas the center of the plants was the stairway that led to the second floor. The structure of this restaurant caused Duan Lingtian's eyes to light up. Duan Lingtian spurred his horse forward with Li Fei and Shang Quan, and they quickly passed by the restaurant. Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian's eyes were sharp, and he was able to see the signboard of the restaurant with a single glance. Scoundrel, this restaurant is so quiet. Li Fei glanced at the second floor of the restaurant in surprise. There were many customers sitting within the second floor, and they were either tasting tea, drinking wine, eating, or chatting, but they had all intentionally suppressed their voices and didn't disturb the other people. An atmosphere like this appearing within the restaurant caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help himself from revealing surprise. A truly strange restaurant. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, then looked at the opposite inn. We'll first get our rooms within this inn, then we'll come out and eat. Drainpool Inn. Duan Lingtian glanced at the inn's signboard, then spurred his horse forward to arrive before the inn's door. Instantly, 3 of the attendants that stood in a row outside the door came forwards, and they respectfully received the reins of the Fergana horses from Duan Lingtian's group of 3, then led the Fergana horses away. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 walked into the inn, and the counter was directly in front of them. A woman around the age of 27 or 28 stood behind the counter, and when he set eyes upon the woman, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be stunned. He only recovered his senses when Li Fei put her hand on his waist and gave it a twist. Although this woman's appearance was inferior to Li Fei, there wasn't too much of a difference. But for an unknown reason, it seemed as if traces of a charming energy was between the woman's brows, causing others to easily be lost within. Charming technique. After Duan Lingtian became clear-headed, his mood surged. The memories of the rebirth martial emperor contained records of charming techniques. Charming techniques were a cultivation method used by women. Once it was cultivated to mastery, it was capable of causing men to lose themselves within it, and allow the woman to manipulate the man at will. Amongst Duan Lingtian's group of 3, only Duan Lingtian was affected by the charming technique of the woman behind the counter. Shang Quan's cultivation was deep and his gaze was clear, he remained unmoved. As for Li Fei, she was a woman, so she naturally wouldn't be charmed by a woman. Duan Lingtian understood that this woman ought to be the manager of this Drainpool Inn, and he walked over to the counter and said, "Manager." But the woman who supported herself on the counter and had her hand against her beautiful cheek seemed as if she entirely didn't hear Duan Lingtian. Her eyes that were like a green lake gazed straight towards something outside the inn. Duan Lingtian followed the woman's gaze to look over, and he noticed that the woman's gaze had descended onto a slovenly young man who sat by the window on the second floor of the opposite restaurant. This slovenly young man was around 30 years old. He had a face covered in stubble and his hair was casually draped on his shoulders, seeming to be neglectful of his appearance. He held a wine gourd in his hand as he leaned on the side of the window and drank wine. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian saw that the slovenly young man seemed as if he'd noticed Duan Lingtian's gaze, and the young man turned around to nod and smile to Duan Lingtian. Even though the slovenly young man turned away right after he finished nodding, but Duan Lingtian still saw his appearance clearly. This was a handsome young man with starry eyes and sword-shaped brows, and his rectangular face that was covered with stubble was filled with vigor. His pair of experienced eyes seemed to be recounting that he'd once experienced countless vicissitudes of life. This is a person with a story. This thought couldn't help but arise within Duan Lingtian's heart. Oh, he's unwilling to spare me a single glance after all. Suddenly, a sigh sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears, and only now did he notice that the beautiful manager behind the counter had already come back to her senses and was muttering to herself. Duan Lingtian had a strange gaze. This beautiful manager spoke off wouldn't be that slovenly young man that's drinking wine on the second floor of the opposite restaurant, right? Finally, the beautiful manager lifted her head and looked at Duan Lingtian's group of three as she asked. The three of you want to stay? Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. How many rooms do you want? The beautiful manager asked. 2, Duan Lingtian said. In next to no time, the beautiful manager took out 2 keys and passed them to Duan Lingtian. First skyroom, second skyroom, it's free of charge. All of you can stay for as long as you want. At the same time that Duan Lingtian received the keys, he heard the beautiful manager, and he was completely stunned. Free of charge? Could it be that if you're handsome then it's free? Duan Lingtian said inwardly. Why? When Duan Lingtian was still dazed, Li Fei looked at the beautiful manager and asked with a curious expression. The beautiful manager glanced at Li Fei, and her beautiful eyes that were like jade lakes revealed a trace of recollection. Little girl, when I see you, it's as if I've seen myself from all those years ago. As for why your stay is free of charge, it's because he looked at your man and smiled at your man. What the beautiful manager said caused Duan Lingtian to recover from his shock. So it turned out that the beautiful manager didn't make their stay free because of his appearance. Li Fei was unable to wrap her head around it when she heard the beautiful manager, as she completely didn't know what the beautiful manager was saying. Exactly, a charming smile appeared on the beautiful manager's face. He rarely smiles at others. Since he smiled at your man, it shows that your man is out of the ordinary. A person that's able to make him smile can stay in my inn for free, no matter how long. What the beautiful manager said caused Li Fei to be even more confused. Presently, it was probably only Duan Lingtian who was able to understand the meaning behind the beautiful manager's words. Because only he saw the slovenly young man on the opposite restaurant earlier, and only he saw the slovenly young man smile at him. Looks like the beautiful manager of this drain pool inn secretly loves that slovenly young man, and that slovenly young man ought to know of it. Otherwise, he wouldn't only glance at me and smile at me before turning around. In this instant, Duan Lingtian successfully guessed many things. Duan Lingtian thanked the beautiful manager, then passed one of the keys in his hand to Shang Quan before taking Li Fei to step onto the inn's stairs. Duan Lingtian lightly turned around and he could see that the beautiful manager had once again continued to peep at the slovenly young man. I never expected that we would only just arrive at the ancient city of Everlast and were already able to encounter such an interesting thing. A wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. 345 Chapter 346, Zhang Shouyang. When she heard Duan Lingtian's muttering, Li Fei's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of curiosity as she slowly asked. Scoundrel, what interesting thing? Do you know something? I'll tell you when we get to our room. Duan Lingtian smiled mysteriously, then he took Li Fei's hand and found the first skyroom before opening the door to enter, then he turned his hand around to look the door. Scoundrel, Li Fei just wanted to continue asked when she noticed Duan Lingtian emitting a gaze that was like a hungry wolf, and she instantly seemed as if she'd realized something. Her delicate figure trembled and her beautiful face flushed rosy. Duan Lingtian pounced towards Li Fei like a hungry wolf pouncing to eat. After a while of being locked together, Duan Lingtian embraced Li Fei who wore an expression of satisfaction as he quietly lay on the bed, and his face revealed a satisfied smile. Li Fei lay on Duan Lingtian's sturdy shoulders as she asked curiously. Scoundrel, you still haven't told me, what did you notice earlier? Obviously, Li Fei was extremely interested in the matter relating to the beautiful manager. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled, and slowly told Li Fei of what he had noticed without a single omission, then he asked. Is it interesting? It can't be, right? Li Fei was dazed for a moment when she heard Duan Lingtian, then muttered. That manager earlier was so outstanding, yet she actually likes a slovenly drunkard that doesn't care about his appearance. That drunkard has really accumulated good fortune from many lifetimes. Also, the most annoying of it all is that drunkard actually doesn't appreciate it. As she finished speaking, Li Fei was slightly enraged, and she felt an injustice had been done to the beautiful manager. This caused Duan Lingtian to be speechless. He was really unable to fully understand the thoughts of a woman. As far as he was concerned, even if that slovenly young man was a drunkard, so what about it? He still had the right to choose. Liking is liking, and not liking is not liking, and it wasn't something that a suit of beauty could affect. They rested for a while longer and the sky gradually dimmed. Duan Lingtian slapped Li Fei's bulging butt. Little Fei, get up and get dressed. We'll go to the opposite restaurant to eat, then go for a walk in the ancient city of Everlast's night market. Li Fei's beautiful face blushed rosy and her gaze blurred. Her blushing face was only covered after she wore her clothes and put on her veil. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian had gotten dressed as well. Duan Lingtian brought Li Fei out, then called Shangquan before the three of them left the inn. Before leaving the inn, Duan Lingtian noticed that the beautiful manager still supported herself on the counter, supporting her cheek with her hand as she gazed at the opposite restaurant. Could it be? Duan Lingtian walked out of the inn and raised his head to gaze over, and only now did he notice that as expected, the slovenly young man was still leaning on the window as he drank wine. HMPH. When Li Fei noticed the slovenly young man, she snorted in a low voice, seeming to be extremely displeased with the slovenly young man. Let's go. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, then he took Li Fei's hand and walked into the Eternal Jade restaurant with Shangquan following behind him. He stepped onto the staircase that was surrounded by jade green plants and walked up to the second floor. Although there were many people having a meal on the second floor of the restaurant, it seemed to be incomparably quiet. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei had only just sat down when a beautiful woman whose beauty wasn't inferior to the beautiful manager of Drainpool Inn and had a similar age to the inn manager had walked over, then lightly smiled as she asked. Customers, what will you have? Right at this moment, Duan Lingtian noticed that when this woman appeared, the calm gaze of the slovenly man that leaned on the window while drinking wine had suddenly lit up and descended onto this woman. At this moment, in the eyes of the slovenly young man, it seemed as if only this woman remained in the world, and no other thing remained. This sort of gaze was extremely familiar to Duan Lingtian, as it would only appear when one was facing their true love. Looks like this slovenly young man likes this woman. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding. Could it be that this was the love triangle of legends? Li Fei looked at the woman and blinked her beautiful eyes as she asked curiously. Big sister, are you the manager of this restaurant? Sort of. The woman lightly smiled as she nodded. Sort of. Li Fei was stunned as she didn't understand the meaning behind the woman's words. The woman continued. This restaurant was opened by me and my husband. Duan Lingtian's eyes were sharp and he was able to notice that when the woman said, husband, her gaze couldn't help but dim slightly, and traces of inexplicable feelings were mixed within. She seemed to be extremely unconfident. Duan Lingtian was bewildered. This woman seemed to be extremely unconfident when she mentioned her own husband. It was slightly strange. So that's how it is. Li Fei smiled. She'd noticed the woman's lack of confidence in her eyes, but Li Fei didn't ask any further. After all, every household had its own troubles. Suddenly, seeming to have thought of something, Li Fei's beautiful brows slightly frowned as she gazed at the slovenly young man who leaned on the window and drank wine, then slowly said to the woman, Big sister, why does your restaurant let anyone come up here? This slovenly drunkard seems to have stayed in your restaurant for an extremely long time, right? Doesn't he affect your restaurant's business? Do you want us to help you drive him out? As she finished speaking, Li Fei's eyes had traces of excitement mixed within. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched. Looks like it was difficult for Li Fei to get over the matter of the slovenly young man disregarding the beautiful inn manager. When the beautiful restaurant manager who stood before Duan Lingtian and Li Fei heard Li Fei, she was stunned, then couldn't refrain from bursting out in laughter, and her laughing appearance was extremely pleasing to the eye. Big sister, what are you laughing at? Li Fei's beautiful eyes contained a trace of a puzzled expression when she saw the beautiful restaurant manager suddenly bursting out laughing. The manager shook her head and smiled as she said slowly, Miss, he's my husband. Ah, When they heard what she said, not only was Li Fei stunned, even Duan Lingtian was stunned as well. That slovenly young man is the husband of this restaurant's manager. The husband that could cause her to have an unconfident feeling. Duan Lingtian was slightly speechless. Have the ways of the world changed? Such a beautiful restaurant manager would actually be unconfident when mentioning a slovenly husband. Little brother. Suddenly, a voice transmission sounded out in Duan Lingtian's ears, causing Duan Lingtian's face to go grim. Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted, and only now did he notice that the slovenly young man had suddenly appeared to stand by the restaurant manager's side, and lightly smiled to him. We meet again. Yes, we meet again. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, and his heartbeat quickened. When did this slovenly young man appear by the restaurant manager's side? His acute spiritual force actually didn't notice in the slightest. Young master, he isn't simple. Right at this moment, Shang Quan's voice transmission entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Shang Quan's voice obviously contained a sense of fear mixed within. Actually, even if Shang Quan didn't warn him, Duan Lingtian would also have noticed that this slovenly young man wasn't simple. This young man looked slovenly and paid no attention to his appearance, but in truth, he was a person who was extremely particular about things. In the beginning, Duan Lingtian didn't carefully observe the slovenly young man, so he hadn't noticed it yet. Now, Duan Lingtian was instead able to discern this from the slovenly young man's bright and clean face. So it turned out that this young man's slovenliness and paying no care to his appearance was only a disguise. You two know each other. When the restaurant manager saw Duan Lingtian and her husband greeting each other, she had an astonished expression. The slovenly young man stretched out his hand to take the manager's slender hand and tightly grasped it, then he said with a light smile, I saw him entering Zan Qi's inn. Zan Kai. Suddenly, the manager's delicate figure trembled. Duan Lingtian was slightly surprised. At this moment, he was able to notice that when the restaurant manager heard the slovenly young man mention the name Zan Kai, she was obviously slightly unusual. Moreover, at that moment, the lack of confidence on the manager was even more obvious. Zan Kai, could it be that it's the name of that inn's manager? Duan Lingtian guessed inwardly. Looks like the restaurant manager and her husband know the inn manager. Duan Lingtian's thoughts became cleared gradually. That inn's manager obviously liked the slovenly young man, whereas the slovenly young man was the husband of the restaurant's manager. Moreover, his heart obviously only had the restaurant manager within it. This was something that could be discerned from how he disregarded the inn manager but was tender and protective to the restaurant manager. But, although the heart of the slovenly young man was completely on the restaurant manager seemed to still be extremely unconfident. This was something that Duan Lingtian was unable to wrap his head around no matter how he thought about it. It was too complicated. Logically speaking, the lack of confidence of the restaurant manager was completely not required. Because the heart of her husband was completely on her, and besides her, there was no one else in his heart. Perhaps, there's another reason. Duan Lingtian could only think like this. The slovenly young man lightly pinched his wife's palm, then looked at Li Fei and changed the topic. Little lady, you asked my wife if she needed you to help her drive me out. Li Fei's beautiful face beneath her veil flushed, and for a time, she didn't know what to say. Actually, right at the beginning when she found out the slovenly young man was the husband of the restaurant manager, she'd known that she had misunderstood the slovenly young man. It wasn't that the slovenly young man didn't take a fancy to the inn manager, but he already had a wife. It's all a misunderstanding. Duan Lingtian helped Li Fei ease the situation, then he lightly smiled to the slovenly young man and the restaurant manager. May I know the name of big brother and sister? Duan Lingtian helped change the topic. This slovenly young man was unfathomable, and it caused him to feel afraid. The slovenly young man glanced at the restaurant manager when he heard Duan Lingtian, seeming to be seeking her opinion. The restaurant manager lightly nodded. Little brother, I'm Zhang Shouyang, and this is my wife, Wang Chong. The slovenly young man nodded with a smile to Duan Lingtian. He obviously didn't fuss about what Li Fei had said earlier and was extremely magnanimous. So it's big brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian nodded and smiled. I'm Duan Lingtian, this is my fiancé, Li Fei. I hope that big brother Zhang and sister-in-law can forgive us for the offense earlier. Brother Lingtian, you're joking. It's only a small matter. Like the saying goes, ignorance can be forgiven. Zhang Shouyang shook his head, and had an expression of indifference as he didn't mind. 346 Chapter 347, Directly Thrown Out. The manager pair of Eternal Jade Restaurant were easygoing people, they only laughed it off and didn't take Li Fei's offense to heart. Wang Chong looked at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, and flowing lights revolved within her beautiful eyes as she asked with a slight smile. Brother Lingtian, what are you and little sister Li Fei having? Sister-in-law, you choose the dishes for us, we don't avoid any foods. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled to Wang Chong. Okay, Wang Chong smiled and nodded, then she turned around and went to prepare the food. As for Zhang Shouyang, he nodded to Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, then returned to sit before the window, then leaned on the side of the window as he picked up the wine gourd and drank wine by himself. The wine gourd in his hand was like a bottomless pit, and the wine within was forever unable to be finished. Duan Lingtian shook his head. If it wasn't for him having already seen through Zhang Shouyang's disguise, perhaps he would really think that the slovenly young man was only a drunkard. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian looked at Li Fei, and as he recalled the scene of Li Fei acting against Zhang Shouyang, he couldn't help but laugh. Scoundrel, don't laugh. When Li Fei saw Duan Lingtian staring at her as he laughed, how could she not know what Duan Lingtian was laughing about? She was instantly slightly angry from embarrassment. All right, I won't laugh. Duan Lingtian shook his head and didn't tease the little girl any longer. Little Fei's beautiful eyes slightly moved about as she asked curiously. Scoundrel, where do you think that big brother Zhang got such great charm? He already has a wife that's as beautiful as a flower, but he actually also has another beautiful manager that likes him. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Since ancient times, love was undoubtedly the most complicated, who is capable of making a matter of love clear? Scoundrel, I noticed that big sister Wang Chong seemed to be slightly unconfident when facing big brother Zhang, did you notice? Li Fei asked in a light voice. Duan Lingtian nodded. I did. Scoundrel, do you want to know why? Li Fei's beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity, as if she wanted to understand the matters between the manager and her husband a step further. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but smile. This little girl's curiosity is actually so great. But Duan Lingtian touched his heart and asked himself, and in his heart, he too was undoubtedly filled with curiosity towards this matter. Duan Lingtian saw the strand of bright light that flashed within Li Fei's beautiful eyes, and he asked curiously. What, you have a way to find out? Li Fei smiled mysteriously but temporarily didn't tell Duan Lingtian of her plans. This caused Duan Lingtian to gnash his teeth with hatred, and he wished for nothing more than to punish Li Fei on the spot. In next to no time, their food was served. Shang Quan, sit down and eat as well, Duan Lingtian said to Shang Quan. Shang Quan had followed them to endure the hardships of the arduous journey, and he hadn't eaten a proper meal for the last 4 months. Thank you, young master. Shang Quan sat down respectfully. Duan Lingtian noticed that Li Fei had only taken a few mouthfuls before she left her seat and walked towards the manager. Big sister Wang Chong, let me help you. Now, Duan Lingtian understood Li Fei's plan. Looks like Li Fei wanted to sound Wang Chong out like this. This restaurant looks nice, us brothers will eat here today. Suddenly, a wave of clamorous noise entered Duan Lingtian's ears. In next to no time, a few middle-aged men could be seen to be chatting and laughing loudly as they walked up the second floor of the Eternal Jade Restaurant. Their uproarious talk and laughter had broken the peace on the second floor of the Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian frowned, the other customers who were having food in the restaurant frowned as well. They all had displeased expressions. This restaurant is rather quiet. One of the middle-aged men said in astonishment, and within this quiet second floor of the restaurant, his voice was like a thunderclap. Right at this moment, a cold and indifferent voice suddenly resounded out. Eternal Jade Restaurant prohibits clamors. If customers aren't able to do this, then please leave. When he heard this voice, Duan Lingtian looked at the slovenly young man who leaned at the side of the window. Presently, it was precisely this unusual restaurant manager, Zhang Shouyang, that was speaking. The middle-aged men were stunned when their voices were suppressed by Zhang Shouyang. In next to no time, they recovered from their shock, then walked over with large strides to surround Zhang Shouyang by the window. The middle-aged man in the lead sneered. You're just a stinking drunkard, yet you dare chide us lords. This lord wants to tell you that when I enter a restaurant, I always do as I please. Since when did a drunkard dare be so arrogant? Truly courting death. Stinking drunkard, if you have the guts then say it one more time, see if your uncle doesn't throw you down. The other middle-aged men looked at Zhang Shouyang with faces that revealed a smile of madness. Finally, Zhang Shouyang had his head lowered and was drinking wine all along finally moved. The Eternal Jade Restaurant doesn't welcome all of you. Zhang Shouyang slowly spoke, and after he finished, he once again picked up the wine gourd and took another mouthful of wine, then his head slightly swayed, exactly like a stinking drunkard. These fellows are going to suffer. Duan Lingtian sat afar and just happened to see the trace of fierceness that flashed within Zhang Shouyang's eyes, and his heart jerked slightly. Ha ha, the middle-aged men burst into laughter when they heard Zhang Shouyang, and after they finished laughing, they wanted to mock him once more. But unfortunately, they didn't have the chance. Whoosh! Suddenly, an eye-piercing sound of something tearing through the air sounded out. In the next moment, in the eyes of Duan Lingtian, those middle-aged men emitted shrill cries and seemed as if they'd flown out the window on their own. Bang, 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 outside the window, heavy sounds of weighty object hitting the ground resounded out, and accompanying it were a wave of miserable shrill cries. So fast, Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, he knew clearly in his heart that it was surely Zhang Shouyang that had tossed them out earlier. However, he'd only heard the ear-piercing sound of something tearing through the air when Zhang Shouyang attacked, yet didn't see Zhang Shouyang make any movement. Even to the extent that the silhouette that condensed into form above Zhang Shouyang flashed before disappearing swiftly, causing his eyes to be unable to catch a glimpse. Shang Quan, did you see him attack clearly? Duan Lingtian looked at Shang Quan and asked in a low voice. Shang Quan nodded with a serious expression, and after a short moment, he said, his speed is extremely swift, even I didn't see clearly the silhouettes that flashed above him, but what I can be sure of is that he is stronger than me. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted when he heard what Shang Quan said. Even Shang Quan is embarrassed by his inability when facing this Zhang Shouyang. After all, after the origin sealing parasite was completely removed from him, not only had Shang Quan recovered his cultivation at the 6th level of the void prying stage, but now, his cultivation had even broken through to the 7th level of the void prying stage. Wouldn't this mean that the strength of Zhang Shouyang was at the 9th level of void prying stage or above? It was difficult for him to imagine it, a young man that seemed to be a little over 30 actually possessed such a terrifying strength. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath then stretched out his acute spiritual energy, wanting to rely on his spiritual energy and the lifetime worth of experience of the rebirth martial emperor to examine Zhang Shouyang's cultivation, but the results exceeded his expectations. When his spiritual force merged into Zhang Shouyang's body, it was like a rock that sunk into the sea. It was exactly the same like when he examined the mysterious yellow-clothed young girl, Han Shui-nai. There were only two possibilities when such circumstances appeared. Possibility number 1. Zhang Shouyang was like Han Shui-nai, and knew of a method to conceal his cultivation, or the cultivation method he cultivated was able to restrain the aura of his cultivation. Possibility number 2. Zhang Shouyang was an expert at the void initiation stage. A void initiation stage expert at an age slightly over 30. He wouldn't feel that it was strange if a void initiation stage expert that was just slightly over 30 had appeared in the foreign lands. But now, it had appeared within the ancient city of Everlast that was within the domain of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, and this caused Duan Lingtian to feel that it was slightly inconceivable. In the end, Duan Lingtian determined that Zhang Shouyang's circumstances should relate to the first possibility. Even then, his heart was still filled with shock. After all, not to mention the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, even throughout the entire Darkstone Empire or even the entire Darken Dynasty, an expert that was above the 7th level of the void prying stage at an age that was just above 30 was an existence that was rare like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. After emitting a few shrill cries, the few middle-aged men that were thrown out the window by Zhang Shouyang went completely silent. Obviously, they'd realized how terrifying Zhang Shouyang was and had already left. The Eternal Jade Restaurant returned to its quiet atmosphere once again. After Duan Lingtian finished eating his fill, Li Fei had returned, and when he saw the smile that hung on her face, Duan Lingtian knew that Li Fei had gained some results. Eat some more. Duan Lingtian didn't anxiously ask Li Fei what she had gained, and instead waited for her to eat her fill first before asking. Did you find out? Li Fei nodded, and she had a slightly complacent expression. Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up and he intended to pay his bill and leave. But Wang Chong was unwilling to take his money. Brother Lingtian, I and little sister Li Fei felt like old friends at the moment we first met, Coupled with you addressing my husband as big brother, how could it be proper for us to take your money? Keep it. Thank you, sister-in-law. Duan Lingtian nodded and smiled, not persisting. Then he said his farewells to Zhang Shouyang before taking Li Fei's hand and leaving with Shang Quan. After they left the Eternal Jade restaurant and were walking towards the ancient city of Everlast's night market, Duan Lingtian gazed at Li Fei with a curious expression as he asked. Little Fei, what did you find out? Li Fei sighed. It turns out that big sister Wang Chong is a pitiable person as well. Pitiable person? Duan Lingtian had a puzzled expression, and he listened intently. Big sister Wang Chong was originally a woman with extremely superb natural talent in the martial Dao. Later on, she encountered an accident that caused her dantian to be damaged, and was unable to accumulate origin energy. According to what she said, Big Brother Zhang's natural talent in the martial Dao is extremely high. This made her feel a sense of inferiority and caused her to have the feeling that she didn't deserve Big Brother Zhang, Li Fei said slowly. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding when he heard Li Fei. So it turns out that the reason Wang Chong lacked confidence was because she was unable to accumulate origin energy, whereas Zhang Shouyang was instead an expert in the martial Dao. He was able to understand this. An ordinary woman being together with a man that had extremely monstrous natural talent in the martial Dao was indeed a source of extreme pressure. But, since they'd already gotten married and were husband and wife, why would she still fuss about all this? Perhaps, there's a knot in Wang Chong's heart. Duan Lingtian said inwardly. Moreover, this knot in her heart is very likely to be related to the beautiful manager in the Drain Pool Inn. Li Fei said, I really misunderstood Big Brother Zhang earlier. It turns out that for the sake of Big Sister Wang Chong, Big Brother Zhang was even willing to give up everything and follow her to this remote ancient city of Everlast to open the Eternal Jade restaurant. Opening a restaurant had always been a dream of Big Sister Wang Chong. 347 Chapter 348, Solitary Summit. Scoundrel. Li Fei looked at Duan Lingtian and traces of shock appeared on her beautiful face. I heard from Big Sister Wang Chong that Big Brother Zhang is extremely formidable. She only smiled and shook her head when I asked her if Big Brother Zhang is a nascent soul stage martial artist. Could it be that Big Brother Zhang is a void stage expert? Nascent soul stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Little Fei has really underestimated Zhang Shouyang. Little Fei, I can only say that the cultivation of that Big Brother Zhang is something even Shang Quan felt himself to be inferior to, Duan Lingtian slowly said to Li Fei. What? Li Fei's beautiful face had a shocked expression when she heard Duan Lingtian. She knew Shang Quan's cultivation. The 7th level of the void prying stage. Even amongst void prying stage martial artists, he could still be considered as one of the top. After being dumbstruck for a short moment, Li Fei looked at Shang Quan, seeming to want to get further confirmation from Shang Quan. It wasn't that she didn't believe Duan Lingtian, but that matter was too shocking. Li Fei only completely confirmed it when she saw Shang Quan nod, and she had a shocked expression as she muttered. Big Brother Zhang's cultivation is actually more formidable than Shang Quan. Then wouldn't that mean that Big Brother Zhang is an expert that has surpassed the 7th level of the void prying stage? Gradually, Li Fei's eyes emitted a trace of jealousy. She was jealous of Wang Chong. Wang Chong was a woman that couldn't even cultivate. So, being able to possess unreserved love of such an outstanding man was undoubtedly a type of luck, a type of happiness. From the beginning until the end, that outstanding man had always showered her with tender love, and was even willing to give everything up and bring her along to this remote ancient city of Everlast to open a restaurant. All for the sake of helping her to realize the dreams she'd had all along. Duan Lingtian took Li Fei's hand in an overbearing manner as he asked with a smile. What, my little Fei is jealous of others? Do you think I'm not as good as Big Brother Zhang? Li Fei's beautiful face flushed red and she lightly grunted. You philanderer, Big Brother Zhang is much more faithful than you. It can't be helped, you've already gone down the wrong path and you can't escape anymore. Duan Lingtian laughed slyly as he pinched Li Fei's palm. He then brought Li Fei, who glanced at him with embarrassment, to take a stroll in the ancient city's night market. As the city with the largest trade area of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the night market of the ancient city of Everlast was extremely bustling. It was to the extent that when Duan Lingtian and Li Fei passed some places, they were occasionally able to see some people come into conflict due to some small matters, and it frequently ended with a slaughter. However, the pedestrians that passed by all looked on indifferently, as they seemed to be accustomed to all this and weren't surprised by it. It's truly a chaotic no man's land. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Scoundrel, let's return. Li Fei's beautiful brows lightly frowned as she was slightly not accustomed to this. She was different to Duan Lingtian after all. No matter what, Duan Lingtian had crawled out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood during his previous life as a mercenary, so not only would he not be disgusted by all this, he would even feel it was slightly cordial. Okay. Duan Lingtian noticed the slightly ghastly pale face of Li Fei's under the veil, and he nodded before pulling Li Fei's hand to turn around and return to the inn. Shang Quan followed closely behind Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, and vigilantly observed their surroundings. Once someone dared to try harm Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, he would make a move at the first possible moment to kill that person. Protecting the safety of the young master and the people by the young master's side is the reason for his existence. When they returned to Drainpool Inn, Duan Lingtian noticed that the actions of the beautiful manager hadn't changed this entire time, and she was still staring at the slovenly young man in the opposite restaurant with an infatuated gaze. Duan Lingtian shook his head, then took Li Fei's hand and brought her back to their room. Little Fei, since you're not accustomed to this place, we'll head to the solitary summit to look for Shangguan Yan tomorrow, and we'll leave after we complete the task the young sect leader of the boundless sect entrusted to me, Duan Lingtian said to Li Fei. Li Fei lightly nodded and she quickly fell onto the bed and entered a deep slumber. Duan Lingtian's heart ached slightly as he gazed at Li Fei's exhausted face. He lightly stroked Li Fei's beautiful face that was as smooth as jade with eyes that were filled with tender love. At dawn the next day, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 were prepared to leave. Let's go bid farewell to big sister Wang Chong and big brother Zhang, Li Fei said to Duan Lingtian before they had even left the inn. Duan Lingtian nodded. However, when they left the inn, bathing under the fresh morning air, they instead noticed that the Eternal Jade restaurant hadn't opened yet, and Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Looks like we got up too early. Then we'll come bid our farewells on the way back before leaving. Li Fei suggested. Duan Lingtian agreed, then he and Li Fei spurred their horses to ride into the distance. Shang Quan followed closely behind like a shadow. After they left the ancient city of Everlast, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 headed towards the solitary summit. The solitary summit stood in the distance, and it was even more majestic than the 7-star sword sect's main peak, Dubi Peak. The solitary summit looked to be extremely near, but when Duan Lingtian's group of 3 galloped at full force, it was already an hour later when they finally arrived at the foot of solitary summit. The mountain path on solitary summit was spacious and extremely flat, thus it was completely possible to ascend the mountain with a horse. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 spurred their horses up solitary summit. All along the way, there were a few buildings everywhere on the mountainside of solitary summit. They were either houses made of wood or bricks, or luxurious buildings that were like palaces. The solitary summit is so huge, finding Shangguan Yan here is like looking for a needle in a haystack, asking people all along the way, yet not obtaining even the slightest information relating to Shangguan Yan caused Duan Lingtian they be unable to refrain from revealing a bitter smile as he felt that this was a difficult mission. I thought that we would be directly able to find Shangguan Yan once we arrived at solitary summit, but I never expected that utterly no one knows him. Li Fei's beautiful brows frowned and she was slightly vexed. The solitary summit is so huge, it isn't strange that they don't know Shangguan Yan. Let's continue up the mountain and see if we can find out any information about Shangguan Yan, Duan Lingtian slowly said as he spurred his horse forward. Finally, when they arrived near the peak of solitary summit, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 found some information about Shangguan Yan. You're looking for Shangguan Yan? An old man with a sturdy figure and stubble that covered his entire face was looking at Duan Lingtian's group of 3 as he glared with his fierce eyes. Who are all of you to him? Senior, we're people from the boundless sect, Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he said to the old man. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the experiences of rebirth martial emperor, he was able to discern that this old man was a 9th-level void-prying stage expert. The old man's strength wasn't inferior to the peak master of Megrez Peak, Wu Dao. Boundless sect. When the old man heard Duan Lingtian, he pondered for a moment before muttering. This sect, it's like I've heard it somewhere, right? That old goat Shangguan Yan once said the sect he used to be in was called Boundless Sect. Finally, the old man reacted to what Duan Lingtian had told him, then he looked at Duan Lingtian's group of 3 and asked. All of you are Shangguan Yan's later generation disciples? Later generation disciples? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched, yet he still nodded. Exactly, Shangguan Yan is precisely the ancestor of our boundless sect, Senior, we're looking for him because of an urgent matter. Do you know where he cultivates on Solitary Summit? As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian looked at the old man in anticipation. Unexpectedly, the old man shook his head. I'm afraid all of you have come here for nothing. That Shangguanyan left Solitary Summit around 8 years ago. I originally thought he missed his disciples and had returned to Boundless Sect. Now it would seem that it isn't so. What the old man said caused Duan Lingtian's face to freeze. Shangguanyan already left Solitary Summit around 8 years ago. 8 years ago. At that time, the Boundless Sect hadn't encountered disaster yet. Whereas the Boundless Sect's young sect leader thought that Shangguanyan was at Solitary Summit. In other words, Shangguanyan didn't return to Boundless Sect. We've really come here for nothing. Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a bitter smile as he shook his head. Shangguanyan had left Solitary Summit and had gone missing. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was extremely huge, not to mention him. Even the Rebirth Martial Emperor at his peak strength might not be able to find Shangguanyan under the conditions that he didn't possess any clues. Thank you, Senior, Duan Lingtian said to the old man, then left with Li Fei and Shang Quan. Shang Quan, according to your knowledge, where else would Shangguanyan go besides the Solitary Summit? Duan Lingtian held on the last strand of hope as he asked Shang Quan. Shang Quan smiled bitterly. Young master, even I don't know. Although Shang Quan was the guardian elder of the Boundless Sect, he only entered Boundless Sect later on and had never met Shangguanyan. Duan Lingtian nodded. He knew that wanting to find Shangguanyan now was like finding a needle in a haystack. He could only temporarily put this matter down. Go. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 spurred their horses along the spacious and flat mountain path to head down Solitary Summit. Shang Quan spurred his horse to follow closely behind the other 2, like a shadow. As the saying goes, it's easier to go downhill than uphill, and this was absolutely true. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 had only spent half the time they took to go up the mountain when they arrived at the foot of the mountain. This was also after the time they used to inquire about Shangguanyan all along their way up was removed. Scoundrel, let's go bid our farewells to Big Brother Zhang and Big Sister Wang Chong. Li Fei lightly smiled to Duan Lingtian, and even though her face was covered in a veil, it was still delicate and attractive. Okay, Duan Lingtian's eyes emitted a wisp of affection as he lightly nodded. Go. Right at this moment, an explosive shout sounded out from afar. A blue-clothed young man whipped his Fergana horse as he swiftly dashed towards Solitary Summit. Behind the young man, an old man followed close behind. Let's go. Duan Lingtian slightly swept the blue-clothed young man with his gaze, then called out to Li Fei and Shang Quan, intending to leave Solitary Summit. Right at this moment, nay, Duan Lingtian noticed that when the blue-clothed young man was just about to pass them and enter Solitary Summit, he seemed to have noticed something and suddenly pulled on his horse's reins, forcefully making his Fergana horse stop. Along with a wave of fluttering dust, the Fergana horse below the young man stopped. When Duan Lingtian saw the gaze that was revealed from within the blue-clothed young man's eyes, his face sank. That was a gaze of brazen lust. 348 Chapter 349, The Strength of an Ancient Horned Dragon. Nay, the old man behind the blue-clothed young man had caught up, and he pulled on the horse's reins to make the Fergana horse below him stop before standing by the young man's side. Duan Lingtian's eyes squinted. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime's worth of experience of the Rebirth Martial Emperor, he was able to discern that the cultivation of this old man ought to be at the 5th level of the void-prying stage. As for the blue-clothed young man, he was around the age of 25 and possessed a cultivation at the 7th level of the Origin Core stage. HMPH. Suddenly Duan Lingtian's face sank as he snorted coldly, then spurred his horse forward to block off the lusty gaze the young man shot at Li Fei. His eyes stared fixedly at the young man and was filled with icy coldness. He wouldn't tolerate someone being disrespectful to his woman. Li Fei's beautiful face beneath the veil had sunken slightly when she noticed the young man's gaze earlier. Now, when she saw Duan Lingtian blocking before her, it caused the gloominess on her face to vanish, replacing it with a slight smile of happiness. This was her man, a man that could be relied on. The young man's face couldn't help but sink when his gaze that was appreciating a beauty was blocked off, and he looked at Duan Lingtian as he shouted coldly. Kid, FK off. Although the woman wore a veil and he couldn't see her appearance clearly, he, who had inspected many women, was able to see that this was a beauty just from the pair of willow-shaped eyebrows and eyes that were like autumn water. She was absolutely a woman of top quality. This top-quality woman was far from the group of ordinary women at his home. Especially the hot body of this woman caused him to indulge in lewd fantasies, and his lower regions went hot. In his heart, a greedy desire arose, a desire to take this woman for himself. Now, he couldn't help but become slightly furious from his mood getting disturbed. Duan Lingtian suddenly started laughing when he heard the young man asking him to FK off, and a smile that had slight coldness mixed within appeared on the corners of his mouth. I'll give you 10 breaths of time to disappear before my eyes, otherwise, bear the consequences. Bear the consequences. The young man was instinctively stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian, then he recovered from his shock and couldn't refrain from laughing. The young man's eyes contained condescending contempt as he looked down on Duan Lingtian. Kid, you said earlier that you would give me 10 breaths time to disappear from before you, otherwise, you would make me bear the consequences. Now, the young man even thought that he had heard it wrongly. Because no one dared talk to him like this, or threaten him like this. There's still another 8 breaths of time. Duan Lingtian calmly gazed at the young man, his expression cold and indifferent as before, and he wasn't affected by the young man's words in the slightest. The young man finally confirmed that he didn't hear wrongly earlier. Instantly, he looked at Duan Lingtian and laughed in ridicule. Kid, looks like you're really brave, the time of 8 breaths. Then let me tell you, I don't need the time of 8 breaths to make you a corpse. The young man's manner of speaking was filled with disdain and overbearingness. There's still another 6 breaths of time. Duan Lingtian continued to speak with a calm tone, but within it was traces of killing intent mixed within. Uncle Lin, the disdain on the young man's face grew deeper as he suddenly shouted out in a low voice. Young master, the old man beside the young man respectfully replied. I want that kid and his servant to die within the time of 5 breaths. The young man spoke in a clear voice as he swept Duan Lingtian and Shang Quan with a cold and indifferent gaze, and his tone was as if killing the two of them was like a common occurrence to him. As soon as he finished speaking, the young man added, Uncle Lin, when you attack, you must not injure that little beauty, I want to bring her home to become my 27th concubine. Ha 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 ha. As he finished speaking, the young man burst out into laughter, and his voice was filled with lust and arrogance. 27th concubine. The coldness in Duan Lingtian's eyes grew colder when he heard the young man, and he emitted an oppressive cold aura as he said in a cold voice. There's still 3 breaths of time. Uncle Lin, do it. The young man suddenly shouted out explosively, and his eyes revealed madness. As far as he was concerned, so long as he killed these 2 eyesores, that little beauty would be his. At that time, would she be at his mercy to play with? When he thought of that hot body and superb beauty about to become his plaything, the lusty glow in the young man's eyes grew brighter. Yes, young master. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the old man atop the Fergana horse by his side directly rose into the air from the Fergana horse, and floated in midair. The old man's gaze was incomparably icy cold, and when it descended onto Duan Lingtian and Shang Quan, it was as if he was looking at 2 dead people. Perhaps, in the eyes of the old man, Duan Lingtian and Shang Quan were bound to die in the next moment. Kid, there are some people on this world that you can't afford to offend, properly remember this in your next life. The young man looked at Duan Lingtian as he laughed arrogantly, his eyes filled with viciousness. Is that so? Duan Lingtian sneered then shouted in a low voice. 10 breath of time is up, Shang Quan. Yes, young master, Shang Quan replied, and his eyes abruptly squinted and emitted awe-inspiring killing intent. Whoosh! Right at this moment, an ear-piercing sound of wind howling resounded out. Duan Lingtian's face sank as he noticed that the old man that floated in midair had disappeared before his eyes. At practically the same time, an awe-inspiring strong gale assaulted his face. Duan Lingtian knew clearly that the old man was flashing towards him at an extremely swift speed, desiring to kill him. He could see 7,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensing into form in the air. This was precisely the mark of the 5th level of the void-prying stage. Now, when this 5th level void-prying stage old man attacked Duan Lingtian, he even didn't utilize his spirit weapon nor force. Perhaps, in his opinion, Duan Lingtian still didn't have the qualifications to make him use a spirit weapon of force. In the distance, when the young man who sat atop the Fergana horse saw this scene, he revealed an expression of madness and lust. Die, die, once you're dead, the little beauty by your side will be mine. Right at this moment, whoosh, an incomparably swift figure whistled out, and accompanying it was an explosive shout that was like a thunderclap. A mere 5th level void prying stage dares be presumptuous before my young master. It was Shang Quan who had moved, and in the blink of an eye, before the old man could approach Duan Lingtian, he'd already descended before Duan Lingtian to float in midair and stop the old man. Above Shang Quan, the energy of heaven and earth roiled, and the number of ancient mammoth silhouettes increased unceasingly. 8,000, 9,000, when the ancient mammoth silhouettes increased to 9,999, all of them shook before completely converging together and causing the clouds and mist to roil. When the clouds and mist dispersed, a winding colossus descended to appear before everyone's eyes. This colossus was a few tens of meters long, and its strong figure circled in the air, seeming lifelike. Its blood mouth would occasionally open to breathe the clouds and mist, bring forth a shocking sight to everyone. The colossus was 50% or 60% similar to the azure dragon in Duan Lingtian's impression, but it was much smaller than the azure dragon. Moreover, its appearance seemed even more ferocious, possessing extreme deterrent force. Horned dragon. This was an ancient horned dragon. During the ancient times, the strength of an ancient horned dragon could compare to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths. Now, Shang Quan's strength had surged to be comparable to the strength of an ancient horned dragon. Similar to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths. 7th level void prying stage. A trembling voice suddenly sounded out, and mixed within it was traces of fear. The sound was emitted from the old man that had charged at Duan Lingtian like a bolt of lightning, but when Shang Quan appeared before Duan Lingtian, he hurriedly flashed backwards and floated in midair. As he gazed at the lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouette above Shang Quan, the old man's eyes emitted terror that came from the soul. This middle-aged man's drew upon the energy of heaven and earth as his body moved to condense an ancient horned dragon silhouette. He didn't use a spirit weapon nor utilize force. The old man already knew what this meant. 7th level of the void prying stage. This was a 7th level void prying stage expert. This is an ancient horned dragon. Duan Lingtian's gaze shot towards the sky above Shang Quan. Although he'd already known earlier that Shang Quan had broken through to the 7th level of the void prying stage and knew from the memories of rebirth Martial Emperor that when Shang Quan attacked, he would be able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense an ancient horned dragon silhouette, it was still the first time he'd seen an expert at the 7th level of the void prying stage in battle. The first time he'd seen an ancient horned dragon. Ancient horned dragon. Li Fei had a confused expression, as she's never even heard of an ancient horned dragon. Little Fei, on Cloud Continent, martial artists are able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth when they attack, and develop ancient mammoth silhouettes. However, when the number of ancient mammoth silhouettes reach 10,000, they will automatically transform into an ancient horned dragon. Duan Lingtian noticed Li Fei's confusion and slowly explained. This is the rules of the Cloud Continent, the iron law of Cloud Continent. In other words, the strength of an ancient horned dragon is comparable to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths. Li Fei came to a sudden understanding after she heard Duan Lingtian's explanation, and completely wrapped her head around it. Ancient horned dragon. In the distance, the blue-clothed young man that sat atop the Fergana horse was completely dumbstruck when Shang Quan made a move and drew upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense an ancient horned dragon silhouette. Only now did he recover from his shock. At the instant that he recovered from his shock, his eyes were filled with a luster of disbelief. No, impossible, how could this fledgling kid possible have a 7th level void prying stage expert by his side? No, impossible, impossible. He wasn't willing to believe that all this was real. Subsequently, his chest was completely filled with a feeling of terror. Now, he only had a 5th level void prying stage martial artist by his side. Whereas his opponent instead had a 7th level void prying stage expert by his side. His side obviously had no chance of victory. 349 Chapter 350, Withered Old Man. Fright arose within the blue-clothed young man's heart. Shang Quan, kill this old fellow. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian looked at the old man that floated in midair and abruptly spoke with a voice that had traces of icy coldness mixed within, a voice that didn't contain any emotion. He could imagine that if he didn't have Shang Quan by his side, he'd already have been killed by the old man earlier. The instant the old man disappeared before his eyes, the killing intent that assaulted his face almost suffocated him. That feeling was something he didn't want to feel a second time in his entire life. It was too awful. Yes, young master, Shang Quan replied, and a cold light flashed within his eyes, and with a raise of his hand, a 3-foot-long blade appeared in his hand. Now, when he saw Shang Quan's actions, the old man revealed a gaze of terror as his body shook before transforming into a ghost that flashed straight towards the blue-clothed young man, and grabbed the young man before wanting to flee. Obviously, he wanted to bring his young master along and flee. But would he be able to flee? HMPH. Shang Quan's cold grunt suddenly sounded out, and it was as if being able to freeze the air. At practically an instant, in Duan Ling Tian's eyes, Shang Quan had disappeared on the spot, and when he appeared once again, he'd already chased the old man that flew while carrying the blue-clothed young man, intending to flee into solitary summit. Whoosh! An ear-piercing sword howl echoed out. With just a single sword strike that was swift to the limit and seemed like lightning, a sword strike that brought along a terrifying aura. It transformed into a sword light that flashed out and caused the air to freeze. Swoosh! At practically the same time, another 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes had appeared beside the ancient horned dragon above Shang Quan. These 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes were like stars that twinkled around a bright moon as they surrounded the ancient horned dragon like they were worshipping an emperor. The grade 7 spirit sword in Shang Quan's hand was able to increase his strength by almost 3,000 ancient mammoths. His advanced sword force was able to increase his strength by an additional 2,000 ancient mammoths. The two added together was the strength of almost 5,000 ancient mammoths. Pooh! A dazzling red rose that was condensed from blood suddenly bloomed in the air. Resplendent and gorgeous, the body of the old man carried the blue-clothed young man and desired to flee suddenly stopped in the air, and the bright light in his eyes slowly faded as the 7,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes above him vanished. Cough! The old man's throat trembled as a shocking bloody hole appeared on his throat, and a pillar of dazzling blood surged out. Bang! The old man's body abruptly fell to the ground, and the blue-clothed young man that he held in his hand fell down with him. At this moment, the blue-clothed young man's face was covered in the blood that had shot out of the old man's throat, but he seemed as if he didn't notice it in the slightest. His pair of eyes were open wide like saucers and his body shivered, as if he was terrified to the utmost limit. Duan Ling Tian looked at the old man's corpse with an incomparably calm gaze. So what if you're at the 5th level of the void-prying stage? Before Shang Quan, who's at the 7th level of the void-prying stage, you're still like an ant. If Shang Quan wants to kill you, it's simply as easy as cutting grass. After killing the old man, Shang Quan returned to the Fergana horse, then followed respectfully behind Duan Ling Tian. His gaze was calm as if he'd done something of no great importance. Duan Ling Tian sat on the Fergana horse and his pair of icy cold eyes descended onto the dumbstruck blue-clothed young man. I gave you a chance. Duan Ling Tian's gaze was slightly cold, and although his voice was calm, concealed within it was an awe-inspiring killing intent. The blue-clothed young man's figure trembled, and he shuddered as he recovered from his shock, then he looked at Duan Ling Tian with an expression as terror as he shouted. You can't kill me, you can't kill me. I can't kill you. Duan Ling Tian started laughing brilliantly. Suddenly, a 3-foot-long blade appeared out of thin air in Duan Ling Tian's hand, and it flickered with a slight sheen of origin energy, seeming ready to attack at any moment. Kid, you'll surely die if you dare kill me. You're dead. The blue-clothed young man's face went pale when he saw the 3-foot-long blade in Duan Ling Tian's hand, and suddenly shouted out explosively. If you dare kill me, my grandfather won't let you off. The young man didn't finish speaking in the end. Idiot. Because Duan Ling Tian had already flashed out and sent the 3-foot-long blade in his hand into the young man's chest. Whoosh! Duan Ling Tian's grunted coldly before kicking his leg out in a flash, flying the body of the young man who was pierced through by the sword in his hand, and when the young man crashed onto the ground, the young man was completely without any signs of life. Dead. Duan Ling Tian's body flashed out and removed the spatial rings on the hands of the old man and young man. Hiss! The bright gold grade 7 spirit fire appeared on Duan Ling Tian's palm and slowly flickered. Duan Ling Tian waved his hand and the grade 7 spirit fire descended onto the corpses of the old man and young man, lighting them ablaze. After throwing down the pill fire, Duan Ling Tian put out the pill fire that continuously burned in his hand, and didn't bother to spare the corpses another glance before returning to his Fergana horse, then called out to Li Fei and Shang Quan. Let's go. The three of them spurred their horses and galloped away, heading towards the direction of the ancient city of Everlast. Duan Ling Tian intended to bring Li Fei to bid farewell to the big brother Zhang and big sister Wang of Eternal Jade Restaurant, and after they bid their farewells, they would leave the ancient city of Everlast and return the way they came. Duan Ling Tian had already planned it nicely in his heart. When they came here, they were in a hurry and didn't properly savor the scenery on the journey. On the way back, he would surely take little Fei to have a good time, and sightsee all the way back. Swoosh, swoosh. Not long after Duan Lingtian's group of 3 left, atop a large tree outside Solitary Summit, 2 figures flashed down and arrived before the 2 corpses that were still burning in the blink of an eye. Bang, bang, they both made a move, the bone-piercingly icy cold origin energy in their hands transformed into a cold wind as it howled out, putting out the pill fire on the corpses. Presently, the old man's corpse had already been completely burnt, whereas half the young man's body remained. The 2 people that had done this were 2 middle-aged men. Fortunately, he can still be recognized. One of the middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief. He saw the young man's intact face, and a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Second brothers, it's indeed the grandson of the withered old man. We've hit it big this time. You go follow those 3 people, and I'll send this corpse to the withered old man, then I'll come look for you with the withered old man. The other middle-aged man nodded, and at the same time that he dashed out, he whistled. The sound of the whistle resounded out. Instantly, in the distance, an incomparably swift leopard-type fierce beast flashed over. The middle-aged man's figure moved to descend onto the back of this leopard-type fierce beast before dashing out, his speed far surpassing those Fergana horses. Withered old man, this time, you've going to owe us brothers a huge favor. The middle-aged man that stayed behind had a wisp of a smile on the corners of his mouth. Subsequently, he raised his hand to carry the mangled corpse of the blue-clothed young man as he stepped onto the air before directly flying up Solitary Summit. Ancient City of Everlast. Duan Lingtian's group of 3 returned when it was nearly noon. It's perfect for us to have our lunch at Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian smiled, then spurred his horse to stop outside the Eternal Jade Restaurant before getting off the horse. Then, he took Li Fei's hand and walked into the Eternal Jade Restaurant. As for Shang Quan, he went to find a place for the 3 Fergana horses. Big Brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei walked up the 2nd floor, then looked at the slovenly young man who leaned on the side of the window before nodding with a smile. Zhang Shouyang returned a smile before continuing to drink his wine by himself. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei had only just sat down when Wang Chong had arrived, then she asked with a light smile. Brother Lingtian, little sister Li Fei, you 2 seem fatigued from traveling. Did you 2 go out early this morning? Yeah, big sister Wang Chong, we went to look for someone in Solitary Summit early in the morning, but unfortunately, we were unable to find him. Li Fei lightly nodded, then said, Big sister Wang Chong, I and scoundrel have come to bid our farewells to you and big brother Zhang as we intend to return after we have lunch. So fast? Wang Chong was slightly surprised, then she said with a smile, I thought both of you will be staying for some time. I never expected that you would leave so quickly. You 2 are suddenly leaving, and I haven't even prepared myself mentally. However, since you 2 want to leave, then I'll personally cook for the 2 of you. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei didn't have any reaction yet when the slovenly young man that leaned on the window as he drank wine seemed to become frenzied, and his figure flashed out to sit beside Duan Lingtian. Brother Lingtian, I truly owe it to you 2's fortune today. Zhang Shouyang looked at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, and he lightly smiled, seeming to be extremely fond of the food Wang Chong made. You speak as if I leave you hungry. Wang Chong pouted as she glared at Zhang Shouyang before turning around and leaving to go prepare the food. Li Fei looked at Zhang Shouyang curiously as she asked, Big brother Zhang, could it be that big sister Wang Chong doesn't usually cook for you? It's not that. Zhang Shouyang shook his head lightly, and a wisp of tender affection appeared on his face. It's just that I normally see her being occupied with the things in the restaurant and I'm afraid she would be too tired. So, I rarely allow her to cook. However, I guarantee that the food your big sister Wang Chong cooked will make you praise it profusely, even to the extent you would wish for nothing more than to swallow your tongue as well. As he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyang started smiling. Looks like we'll be able to enjoy a feast today. Li Fei's beautiful eyes lit up and were filled with anticipation. Young master. Meanwhile, Shang Quan had found a place for the 3 Fergana horses and had walked into the Eternal Jade Restaurant. Sit down and eat with us, Duan Lingtian said to Shang Quan. Thank you, young master. Shang Quan sat down. Brother Lingtian, you're very considerate of your servant. Zhang Shouyang glanced at Shang Quan and lightly smiled. Then, seeming to have noticed something, he looked outside the Eternal Jade Restaurant and frowned. Brother Lingtian, you've brought other people here as well. Zhang Shouyang's words caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned. No, what's wrong? Nothing. Zhang Shouyang shook his head, he noticed that the feeling of being watched had vanished now. Maybe my senses were mistaken. Not long after, the food Wang Chong had personally went to cook had arrived. Before they ate, just from smelling the fragrance from the table full of fragrant delicacies had already caused Duan Lingtian's fingers to become restless. Big sister Wang Chong, come sit and eat with us. After the dishes filled the entire table, Li Fei looked at Wang Chong and invited. All of you eat first, there's still a soup, I'll go carry it out. Wang Chong lightly smiled to Li Fei, then turned around to enter the kitchen again. 350 Chapter 351, Void Initiation Stage Expert. Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian and the others all sat around the table as they gulped down the fragrant and steaming hot dishes. It's too good. No wonder Big Brother Zhang said we would even wish for nothing more than to swallow our own tongues. Big sister Wang Chong, your culinary skill is too good. Li Fei praised as she ate. If you like it, then eat more. If there isn't enough, I'll just go make more. Wang Chong smiled to Li Fei, and her beautiful eyes had tender affection mixed within. She had heartfelt love towards this little sister. After their meal, Wang Chong started to clear the dishes and Zhang Shouyang went to the kitchen to help as well. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei sat before the table then rested, and were prepared to rest for a while before bidding their farewells to Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong. Senior withered, there within the restaurant. Suddenly, a clear voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ear. The sound resounded out from outside the Eternal Jade Restaurant and approached swiftly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian heard 3 ear-piercing sounds of wind howling enter his ear. In the blink of an eye, 3 figures had appeared before him. 2 middle-aged men stood at the back, one in azure clothes, another in red clothes, and their faces were exactly similar. Obviously, they were twin brothers. Before these 2 middle-aged men stood a withered old man. The old man's body was frail, like bones covered in skin, and he seemed as if a gust of wind would be able to blow him down. Duan Lingtian didn't dare look down on the old man because of this. He was able to discern that amongst the 3 people before him, the old man in the lead was the most terrifying. Relying on his spiritual force and the experiences of the rebirth martial emperor, he was able to see through the cultivation of the 2 middle-aged men, and they were both 4th-level void-prying stage martial artists. As for the old man, his spiritual force stretched out, but it was like a stone sinking in a great sea. The old man was very likely in existence at the void initiation stage. Duan Lingtian's face sank. It's him. Duan Lingtian saw the old man abruptly speak, his muddy eyes emitting dense cold lights the instant the old man's gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian. The old man seemed as if he was waiting for a chance to swallow Duan Lingtian up. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked. This old man's target is me. Yes. Meanwhile, the azure-clothed middle-aged man behind the old man hurriedly nodded. Senior withered, the 2 of us saw him kill your grandson with our own 2 eyes. The servant by your grandson's side was killed by this 7th-level void-prying stage martial artist. The gaze of the azure-clothed middle-aged man first descended onto Duan Lingtian, then he looked at Shang Quan who was beside Duan Lingtian. What the azure-clothed middle-aged man said caused Duan Lingtian's pupils to constrict. He finally knew what was going on. So it turned out that what he had done at the foot of Solitary Summit this morning had been exposed. This old man that seemed to be a void initiation stage expert was actually the grandfather of the blue-clothed young man he'd killed. He recalled it now. Before his death, the blue-clothed young man seemed to have mentioned this old man. But under his violent rage at that time, how could Duan Lingtian have paid any attention to him? However, even if he now knew that there was an existence that seemed to be at the void initiation stage behind the blue-clothed young man, he still didn't have a shred of regret. Not only had that blue-clothed young man dared be disrespectful to Little Fei, the blue-clothed young man had even tried to kill him. He deserved death. He could imagine that if it wasn't for himself being protected by Shang Quan, the person that had died this morning wouldn't have been the young man, but him instead. So he didn't regret it. If he were to really talk about regret, then what Duan Lingtian regretted the most now was not seeing the 2 corpses burn to ash with his own 2 eyes. Although he didn't see it, he was able to roughly guess what happened after he set the corpses aflame. It should be that when he and Shang Quan did the deed, it was seen by the 2 twin brothers behind the old man. Later on, one of them went to tip off the old man, while the other followed them all the way here. Looks like what Big Brother Zhang noticed earlier was the people that were following us. Duan Lingtian recalled that before their lunch, Zhang Shouyang had asked if he'd brought anyone else over. For a time, Duan Lingtian's heart was clear as a mirror. Why did you kill my grandson? The withered old man's sharp gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian, and it seemed to transform into a bloodthirsty venomous snake that would bite Duan Lingtian at any moment. Duan Lingtian could feel the old man's killing intent that was difficult to restrain. He deserved death. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold, and he spoke with a cold tone that contained killing intent mixed within. Since it had come to this, Duan Lingtian knew he didn't have any choice, he could only go at it head-on. Now, he still wasn't sure that the old man was a void initiation stage expert. Perhaps, he still had a chance. He'd already sent a voice transmission to Shang Quan, asking Shang Quan to wait for the opportunity to launch a surprise attack at the old man and strive to kill him in one attack. Deserved death. The withered old man was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian. In next to no time, his gaze descended onto Li Fei, who was beside Duan Lingtian. Presently, Li Fei hadn't worn her veil yet, and her drop-dead gorgeous face was unobstructed. When he saw Li Fei, a fierce light flickered within the withered old man's eyes, and he said in a deep voice. Looks like my grandson was destroyed because of a woman. Obviously, the old man knew his grandson very well. Now that he saw Li Fei, he easily guessed some things. Duan Lingtian's face went grim when he felt the bloodthirsty killing intent towards Li Fei that was emitted by the withered old man, and he stood up in a hurry to stand before Li Fei and block this bloodthirsty killing intent for her. HMPH. Duan Lingtian's expression was cold and indifferent, and his waist and back were straight. When faced with the old man's bloodthirsty killing intent, he wasn't afraid in the slightest as he stood there, immovable like a mountain. Scoundrel. When the old man's killing intent enveloped her, Li Fei felt as if she was within a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. The suffocating feeling caused extreme discomfort to her. Now, Duan Lingtian was standing before her, and at the same time that this caused her to feel warmth in her heart, she was also slightly worried. When the old man saw this, his white brows rose and he grunted coldly. Kid, needless to say, you're not bad, but unfortunately, today, you must die. As the saying goes, women are a source of disaster. Remember to stay far away from women in your next life. Whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, origin energy flickered atop the withered old man's hand. Whoosh. Right at this moment, an ear-piercing sound of something tearing through the sky carried along a string of sounds of air exploding had suddenly echoed out. It was Shang Quan, who's been waiting for an opportunity all along. When he saw his young master's life in danger, Shang Quan's body flashed out, transforming into a lightning bolt as he flashed towards the withered old man. Swoosh. A dazzling sword light shot out violently. It was like a venomous snake that had left its burrow as it struck towards the old man while carrying along traces of an extremely terrifying aura. Advanced sword force. The energy of heaven and earth roiled in the sky, then first an ancient horned dragon silhouette appeared, then almost 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared to surround it. They were like twinkling stars that were surrounding the bright moon. Shang Quan exerted his full strength at the moment he attacked, without holding back in the slightest. He desired to kill the old man directly. Advanced sword force. The old man's slightly muddled eyes squinted, and his voice contained a trace of surprise. Then, trifling skill. The old man sneered, and he casually raised his hand to intercept Shang Quan. Instantly, the energy of heaven and earth roiled above the old man, and in the end, it condensed into two ancient horned dragon silhouettes. The old man didn't utilize a spirit weapon, nor did he utilize a void initiation stage expert's concept. He only attacked purely with origin energy, and it was already comparable to the strength of two ancient horned dragons. First level void initiation stage. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted and his face went pale, then he shouted out abruptly. Shang Quan, watch out! Meanwhile, Shang Quan had noticed the two ancient horned dragon silhouettes above the old man, and he instantly realized that the old man was a first-level void initiation stage expert. His face couldn't help but go pale. Slap! The old man raised his hand and grabbed out, easily seizing the grade 7 spirit sword in Shang Quan's hands. At this moment, Shang Quan's 7th level void prying stage strength, the amplified strength from his grade 7 spirit sword, and even the advanced sword force were all so weak, like paper. Move! Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force vaguely detected that the old man was about to attack with his sword, so Duan Lingtian shouted out explosively again to warn Shang Quan. Due to his trust towards Duan Lingtian, Shang Quan didn't hesitate in the slightest when he heard Duan Lingtian, and his legs stomped on the ground as his strength of one ancient horned dragon exploded out fully, desiring to dodge the attack coming from the side. Whoosh! At practically the instant Shang Quan moved, the Grade 7 spirit sword in the withered old man's hand that he'd seized from Shang Quan was like a stroke of the gods as it flashed out directly towards Shang Quan. This sword strike was originally flashing straight for Shang Quan's heart. It was precisely because of Duan Lingtian's warning that seemed like foresight that Shang Quan was able to dodge a moment earlier, allowing his heart to escape by a hair's breadth. However, even then, the Grade 7 spirit sword still pierced into Shang Quan's body like piercing through dry leaves. Hitting right on his dantian. Pooh! Fresh blood sprayed out, transforming into numerous red roses. Shang Quan's body fiercely flew out, knocking over a few tables as he flew. No, no! Shang Quan's voice was in panic, and after he dropped to the ground, he fiercely clenched his fists. However, what appeared above him now wasn't an ancient horned dragon any longer, it was instead an ancient mammoth silhouette. 9th level of the body tempering stage. His dantian had been crippled by the sword strike of the withered old man, and he'd lost all the origin energy in his body. All that remained was a cultivation at the 9th level of the body tempering stage. Shang Quan roared for a short moment, then stopped and had a dejected expression. Right at this moment, a wave of clamorous sound echoed out. It was the crowd of customers on the 2nd floor of the Eternal Jade restaurant that were watching the events unfold, and when they saw the matter had developed to this extent, they were extremely afraid it would affect them. So, they all put down their money and left in panic, rushing to leave the restaurant. Shang Quan. Duan Lingtian glanced at Shang Quan, and his eyes went crimson red and his face was terrifyingly gloomy. A trace of guilt arose within his heart. If it wasn't for him wanting to go to Solitary Summit, Shang Quan wouldn't have been here, and nothing would have happened to him. During all these years that Shang Quan had followed by his side, Shang Quan had exerted himself to the utmost limit to handle work for Duan Lingtian, and didn't complain in the slightest. Duan Lingtian had always been grateful for this in his heart. Now, because of him, Shang Quan's cultivation was crippled, he felt as if he'd been crippled. When he heard Duan Lingtian's explosive shout, Shang Quan raised his head, and when he noticed Duan Lingtian's gaze, he couldn't help but force a smile. Young master, I'm fine, I only lost my origin energy, my advanced sword force is still here. No one beneath the void-prying stage is able to defend against a single strike of my sword. The advanced sword force was a type of deep comprehension of a void-prying stage martial artists towards the sword. It had separated itself from origin energy, and was comparable to the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. 351 Chapter 352, 9 Heavenly Tribulation. A wisp of bitterness appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth when he heard Shang Quan. A 7th-level void-prying stage expert had his dantian crippled in the blink of an eye, and had lose all his origin energy to become a martial artist that was inferior to even a 1st-level void-prying stage martial artist. Could this be said to be fine? Duan Lingtian asked himself. If it was him, he would surely be unable to accept reality. He knew clearly in his heart that Shang Quan only said this to console him, as Shang Quan didn't want Duan Lingtian to feel guilty. But how could he not feel guilty? Shang Quan, I owe you. At the same time that Duan Lingtian silently sighed in his heart, a bitter smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. What he owed Shang Quan was something he would probably only be able to return in his next lifetime. He'd killed the grandson of this void initiation stage expert before him, and it was impossible that this old man would let him off. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and stared coldly at the withered old man in a neither haughty nor humble manner. Scoundrel! Meanwhile, Li Fei held Duan Lingtian's hand and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. They would share everything together. As far as she was concerned, being able to live and die together with Duan Lingtian in this lifetime was a life that wasn't lived in vain. Little Fei. When Duan Lingtian saw Li Fei like this, the cold indifference on his face vanished, and replacing it was extreme gentleness. He lightly stretched his hand out to stroke Li Fei's beautiful face. Do you regret knowing me? Li Fei shook her head. In this lifetime, being able to know you is the greatest providence the heavens gave me. Even if I have to leave this world with you in the next moment, I still wouldn't regret it. Because I'll be able to stay by your side at all times. You will never be alone. Duan Lingtian nodded heavily, then he took a deep breath and forced out a trace of a smile on his face. In her eyes, a trace of firmness was gradually revealed. No matter what, so long as there was still a sliver of a chance, he wouldn't let anything happen to little Fei. HMPH. A cold snort sounded out, breaking this beautiful atmosphere. A truly touching scene. My poor grandson, he died because of this woman. The withered old man's voice was cold and indifferent, his expression extremely gloomy. Whoosh! Suddenly, the withered old man moved to attack. In the blink of an eye, he'd taken Li Fei from Duan Lingtian's side. Little Fei. Duan Lingtian's face went grim when he saw this, and the instant he reacted, his figure flashed out, wanting to save Li Fei. Whoosh! The old man casually raised his leg and a leg image swept out. He only used the strength of over 100 ancient mammoths to kick Duan Lingtian flying. Instantly, Duan Lingtian felt his internal organs shake, and something sweet rushed up his throat. Bang! In the next moment, his entire body flew out like an arrow, leaving the bow before fiercely smashing onto the wall. Pooh! Duan Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood, and his internal organs quaked, causing him to be almost suffocated. However, when he saw Li Fei was still in the hands of the old man, Duan Lingtian abruptly shouted out explosively and flew out once again, transforming into a venomous serpent. Sword drawing arts. His sword flashed out like lightning as it flew straight for the old man. Whoosh! The sword light that flashed by seemed to have transformed into the fangs of a venomous snake that bit at the old man. Futile effort. The old man sneered, then casually raised his hand to blast Duan Lingtian flying once again. Pooh! Duan Lingtian spat out a mouthful of fresh blood again. He was barely able to stand up using his sword to support himself, and his body swayed, seeming as if he might fall at any moment. Scoundrel! This scene caused Li Fei's eyes to nearly split open and she exclaimed in sorrow. Whoosh! Right at this moment, a slovenly figure flashed out from within the second floor of the Eternal Jade restaurant, and his hand held the hand of a beautiful woman. It was precisely the husband and wife pair of the Eternal Jade restaurant. Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong. They were originally busy in the kitchen, but when they noticed the commotion they'd hurried out at the first possible moment. When they saw the scene before them, Zhang Shouyang frowned, whereas Wang Chong's beautiful face went pale. Little sister Li Fei. Kid, looks like you love this woman very deeply, you actually fight so desperately for her sake. The withered old man only glanced at Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong indifferently, then didn't pay any attention to them. Perhaps he felt that the two of them were of no threat to him, and his gaze that contained traces of coldness once again descended onto Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian looked at the withered old man, then gnashed his teeth and said, "Old goat, I killed your grandson, it has nothing to do with her. You're a void initiation stage expert in any case, don't you feel it's a loss of face for giving a weak girl a hard time? Whatever it is, come at me." Truly touching. A wisp of a strange smile appeared on the old man's face as he looked at Duan Lingtian and said indifferently. "Kid, I know that it's surely because of this woman that you killed my grandson, how about this? I'll give you a chance. I'll let you leave, but leave this woman behind for me to kill. How about it?" HMPH. Duan Lingtian snorted coldly and disregarded what the old man said. Not to mention he didn't believe that the old man would be so kind. Even if the old man was speaking the truth, it would still be impossible for him to leave. Li Fei was his woman and his life. Asking him to leave him woman and use his woman's life in exchange for his own, and live on alone. He would rather die. Scoundrel, leave quickly. However, Li Fei instead believed the old man, and she looked at Duan Lingtian as she said anxiously. "Quickly leave, you have to take good care of little sister K'er in the future, and live on with little sister K'er." In Li Fei's eyes, even if she exchanged her life for the life of her man, she would have no regrets. A wisp of a sneer appeared on the corners of the old man's mouth as he grunted. "Did you hear it? Your woman asked you to go, kid, hurry up and leave, so as to avoid leaving your life here." Duan Lingtian paid no attention to the old man. He looked at Li Fei and lightly shook his head. "Little Fei, you're too foolish. I killed his grandson, how could he easily let me off? Even if he'd really be willing to let me off, but if the price was your life, then I, Duan Lingtian, would rather die. I, Duan Lingtian, would rather die." Duan Lingtian's voice was clear and contained his will to die, his heroic spirit shooting into the sky. Scoundrel. Li Fei's delicate figure trembled and tears flowed down her beautiful eyes like the rain. At this moment, although she was facing the danger of death, her heart was still filled with happiness. At this moment, it seemed that only Duan Lingtian remained in the world within her eyes. This was her man, Li Fei's man. Duan Lingtian's resoluteness caused the withered old man's face to become unsightly. He naturally wouldn't be so kind as to let Duan Lingtian leave. He only wasted to smash the laughable love between this pair of little lovers, and let them know that their so-called love was so fragile. Now it would seem that he'd failed. This young man that had killed his grandson was actually willing to die for this woman. The withered old man took a deep breath as his hand shook and Li Fei was directly tossed out by him, then he said with a cold and indifferent tone. I'll give you 10 breaths of time, disappear before my eyes and I'll spare your life, otherwise, I'll kill you with this kid. As the old man finished speaking, his eyes emitted a cold and fierce expression. He still wanted to see the scene of the person who killed his grandson being deserted by his loved ones. Only in this way would he be able to vent the hatred in his heart. When he saw this scene, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sneer. Old goat, doing the same thing twice, don't you feel it's a waste of time? You probably wish for nothing more than to burn our bones and scatter our ashes in your heart, would you let any one of us leave? Laughable. Duan Lingtian's words caused the old man's face to flicker between a livid and pale expression. Scoundrel. Li Fei went to Duan Lingtian's side and supported the pale-faced Duan Lingtian up, and the gaze she looked at Duan Lingtian with was full of gentleness. As long as she could stand together with this man, she would have no regrets even if she died in the next moment. In the distance, Zhang Shouyang was slightly moved when he saw this scene. Subsequently, his gaze descended onto Wang Chong. Wang Chong's beautiful face was currently fully covered by tears, as if she transformed into a tearing beauty. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei's actions of not abandoning each other had deeply affected her. The love between the two of them had already surpassed life and death. It was shocking. Kid, what you mean is I will go back on my word. The killing intent in the old man's eyes was awe-inspiring and his face sank. For the sake of seeing Duan Lingtian being abandoned by his loved ones, he secretly gritted his teeth and made a decision. He raised his hand and the origin energy in his hand transformed into a needle that pierced into the tip of his finger. Hiss! A faint strand of fresh blood scattered in the air. I, withered old man, establish this oath with my blood. So long as this woman is willing to abandon this kid and leave, and let this kid experience the bitterness of being abandoned by his loved ones, I, withered old man, am willing to let this woman live. If I go against this oath, I, withered old man, am willing to be blasted to death by the 99 heavenly tribulation. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the fresh blood in the air rose up to the sky in a bizarre manner. In the blink of an eye, a formidable and majestic aura was emitted from above the strand of fresh blood. This aura suppressed everyone present, including the withered old man, and caused them to be unable to refrain from trembling. Bang! That strand of fresh blood directly pierced through the roof of the Eternal Jade restaurant and rushed into the sky. After a short moment, bang! A thunderclap sounded out from the horizon, shocking the entire ancient city of Everlast. A void-crying stage martial artist is overcoming the 6-9 heavenly tribulation in the ancient city of Everlast. This was the first thought that arose within the minds of most people. Only because this thunderclap was no ordinary thunderclap. Bang! Subsequently, another thunderclap resounded out in the sky. No, it's impossible for the gap between the 6 lightning strikes in the 6-9 heavenly tribulation to be so short, some void stage experts that had experienced the 6-9 heavenly tribulation said in astonishment. Bang, 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 comma. In next to no time, many more thunderclaps resounded out, and it only stopped after a total of 9 resounded. This is the 9-9 heavenly tribulation. For a time, the entire ancient city of Everlast was in an uproar. 9-9 heavenly tribulation. Within the Eternal Jade restaurant, Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted as he never expected that the old man would actually establish such a heavy oath. Looks like for the sake of seeing the scene of me being abandoned by my loved ones, this old man is really willing to let Li Fei go. Duan Lingtian's heart trembled slightly as he guessed the reason the old man did this. In next to no time, he looked at Li Fei who was beside him and his eyes revealed traces of tender affection, and within this tender affection was slight reluctance mixed within. Through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian knew of the 9-9 heavenly tribulation like the back of his hand. The 9-9 heavenly tribulation was an oath tribulation that caused the people of Cloud Continent to tremble with fear on hearing of it. In Cloud Continent, other oaths didn't have a substantial binding force as it merely relied on one's conscience, and the person who made the oath could go back on his word at any moment. But once one used one's own blood and established the oath with the 9-9 heavenly tribulation, then it possessed absolute binding force. 352 Chapter 353, Third Level Earth Concept. Supposedly, once someone within Cloud Continent used their own blood to establish an oath under the 9-9 Heavenly Tribulation, then if they dared go against the oath, they would be directly annihilated by the 9-9 Heavenly Tribulation. On Cloud Continent, similar incidents had occurred many times. So no one dared rashly establish an oath under the 9-9 Heavenly Tribulation. This withered old man really does hate me to the bones. Duan Lingtian gazed at the old man with an emaciated figure, his gaze was cold and indifferent like ice. The old man looked at Li Fei, and coldness arose on the corners of his mouth. Now, you can leave peacefully, I truly look forward to how pained he will be when you abandon this kid and leave. As he finished speaking, a wisp of an evil smile appeared on the corners of the old man's mouth. As if he'd already seen the scene of Duan Lingtian being abandoned by all his loved ones. Coldness arose within Li Fei's beautiful eyes as she glanced calmly at the old man, then paid no attention to the old man as her delicate hands tightly held onto Duan Lingtian, and her gaze was firm as before, not changing in the slightest. She wouldn't abandon her man to save herself. Just like her man wouldn't abandon her. Little Fei, when Duan Lingtian saw the withered old man establish the oath under the 9-9 Heavenly Tribulation and was willing to let Li Fei go, he intended to persuade Li Fei to leave. But when he saw the gaze contained within Li Fei's eyes, he perceived the meaning Li Fei wanted to convey. That was a gaze of incomparable firmness and gaze of being unwilling to abandon him forever. He didn't say anything in the end, and a brilliant smile appeared on his face. With a stretch of his hand, he'd taken Li Fei into his embrace, and felt Li Fei's heartbeat. At this moment, Li Fei's heartbeat seemed to completely merge with his heartbeat, and it was difficult for a distinction to be made anymore. I'll give you 3 breaths of time, if you still don't leave, then die with him. The withered old man's body lightly trembled as he suddenly realized that everything he'd done earlier seemed to have been for nothing. Although they were young, this pair of little lovers were actually willing to sacrifice their lives for love. At the same time that he felt it was beyond belief, it also caused him to be slightly angry from embarrassment. When faced with the old man's threats, Li Fei didn't pay a shred of attention to it. She silently leaned in Duan Lingtian's embrace, feeling the familiar aura on Duan Lingtian's body as she enjoyed every minute and every second. She truly hoped that this moment could become eternal. As for Duan Lingtian, as he embraced Li Fei and smelt the fragrance in her hair at this moment, he felt his heart become incomparably calm. At this moment, he was even able to clearly feel that it was as if his soul had raised to a higher level, and his spiritual force that remained dormant for so long was growing at an extremely fast speed. It raised all the way until it was at the verge between the nascent soul stage and the void-prying stage. Towards all this, Duan Lingtian seemed as if he'd entirely not noticed, or perhaps, he knew in his heart that even if his spiritual force had increased, it wouldn't be able to change anything. 3 breaths of time later. Looks like you really want to die with this kid, the withered old man sneered, then his withered figure slightly shook and his origin energy howled. Then I'll let you and this kid become a pair of dead lovebirds. Whoosh. Above the old man, 2 ancient horned dragons gradually condensed into form, their imposing manner shooting into the sky like a rainbow. Young master. When he saw this scene, the face of Shang Quan who'd been struggling to get up went pale, and his body that had just gotten up fiercely dropped onto the ground again. His fist madly hammered the ground like a madman, extremely hating his weakness. Stay your hand. Suddenly, a tender shout resounded in the entire second floor of the Eternal Jade restaurant and caused everyone to be stunned. The withered old man's face sank, then he turned around to look at the source of the sound, and his gaze descended onto Wang Chong. I, withered old man, hate it the most when someone tells me what to do. This matter has nothing to do with you. If you dare say another word, then I'll let you die with them. Duan Lingtian looked at the young man by Wang Chong's side and said slowly, Big brother Zhang, take sister-in-law out of the restaurant. He didn't want to implicate this pair of young husband and wife. Big sister Wang Chong, if there's a next life, I hope that I'll still be able to eat the food you cooked. Li Fei raised her head and slightly smiled to Wang Chong. It's really tasty. Now, quickly go with big brother Zhang. Little sister Li Fei. Wang Chong looked at Li Fei and a wisp of a light smile appeared on her beautiful face that was weeping. Both of you have taught me many things, and allowed me to instantly understand a lot, thank you. If you really want to eat the food big sister cooked, then live on and big sister will cook for you. Live on. What Wang Chong said caused Li Fei to sigh. Did she have the chance? Brother Yang. Suddenly, under the gazes of everyone present, Wang Chong looked at the slovenly young man that was by her side, and she slowly said, "I know that when you followed me to the ancient city of Everlast, you said that unless someone threatened our lives, otherwise, you wouldn't kill again." Suddenly, Wang Chong's fierce gaze descended onto the withered old man and the two middle-aged men in the distance, and her voice became colder. "But today, I hope that you can make an exception for me." For a time, besides the slovenly young man, Wang Chong's words caused everyone to be stunned. Big brother Zhang, he, wouldn't also be a. When Duan Lingtian heard Wang Chong, his heart raced. And at the instant Duan Lingtian's heart raced, a chilly voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. "I understand." This voice came from the faraway slovenly young man. Instantly, in Duan Lingtian's field of vision, the slovenly young man vanished on the spot, as he'd obviously increased his speed to the limit. Duan Lingtian saw the energy of heaven and earth royal in the sky, and it finally condensed into 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. The strength of 3 ancient horned dragons. Big brother Zhang is a second-level void initiation stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian revealed an expression of disbelief, as he'd never imagined that this young man that looked to be a little over 30 would actually possess such terrifying strength. Bang! Duan Lingtian had just realized all this when he heard an enormous bang. It was Zhang Shouyang who'd instantly arrived before the withered old man before smashing out with his fist that was like a sledgehammer, and before the old man could even react, it had already smashed onto his chest. The old man was smashed by the fist to the point that he flashed backwards in retreat, his face flushed red. Second-level void initial stage. The old man gaped with astonishment, and he felt something sweet in his mouth before spitting out a mouthful of blood. Never had he expected that this young man that looked to be a little over 30 would actually be in existence that was even more formidable than him. Whoosh! The old man didn't dare hesitate, the origin energy on his body roiled as a narrow sword appeared within his hand, and then his origin energy skyrocketed as it carried with it an extremely terrifying aura. This aura even surpassed advanced sword force. Sword concept. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted. In the blink of an eye, another ancient horned dragon and 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the 2 ancient horned dragons above the old man. The 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes were like twinkling stars around a bright moon as they surrounded the 3 ancient horned dragons in the middle. "It's a grade 6 spirit sword." A cold light flashed within Duan Lingtian's eyes. The grade 6 spirit sword in the old man's hand was able to amplify almost 40% of his strength. The strength of almost 8,000 ancient mammoths was from the amplification of the grade 6 spirit sword founded from the 2 ancient horned dragons. As for the other ancient horned dragon, that was the strength bestowed upon the old man by his sword concept. Concept surpassed force. Although the old man's sword concept was only the lowest first-level sword concept, it still surpassed the advanced sword force. Advanced sword force was able to allow a martial artist to obtain an extra strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths, just like Shang Quan's advanced sword force. Whereas the first-level sword concept that surpassed the advanced sword force was instead able to allow a martial artist to obtain an extra strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths, or in other words, the strength of 1 ancient horned dragon. Presently, the old man went all out, and his entire strength was comparable to the strength of 3 ancient horned dragons and almost 8,000 ancient mammoths. Die! The old man's eyes were crimson red as his body flashed out, and the narrow sword in his hand trembled before flashed towards Zhang Shouyang like a bolt of lightning. Of course, in Duan Lingtian's eyes, the old man had vanished into thin air. The old man's speed was too swift. With Duan Lingtian's current cultivation, he was utterly unable to see it clearly, and he could only feel a gust of wind swiftly flash by as it swept towards Zhang Shouyang. "Big brother Zhang, watch out!" Duan Lingtian couldn't help but warn. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian realized that his warning was unnecessary. He saw Zhang Shouyang disappear within his gaze, and when Zhang Shouyang appeared once again, he already stood at the spot where the old man had stood earlier. Merely at the first level of the void initiation stage and only at the first level sword concept, you dare display your slight skill before me. Zhang Shouyang's voice contained slight disdain and arrogance mixed within. Whoosh! Practically the instant Zhang Shouyang finished speaking, a light barrier with flowing lights flashing about had suddenly appeared on his body. This wasn't a defensive chi barrier, and was instead a layer of an earthen yellow light barrier. Instantly, Zhang Shouyang's entire figure seemed as if it had merged with the earth, and couldn't be differentiated any longer. Suddenly, Zhang Shouyang took a stride forward. A stride forward was like a mountain collapsing. Bang! An extremely strong aura surged out from Zhang Shouyang's body, and it seemed as if it had perfectly merged with the entire earth. This aura was even stronger than the old man's sword concept. Earth concept. Duan Lingtian was shocked in his heart as he gazed at Zhang Shouyang, who seemed as if he'd completely merged as one with the earth. After he'd merged with the memories of rebirth martial emperor, he wasn't unfamiliar to concept. Even to the extent that he was able to discern that the concept Zhang Shouyang was utilizing was a concept that was extremely difficult to comprehend. One of the concepts of nature, the earth concept. Earth concept was able to allow one's aura to completely merge with the earth. Not only would one be able to hide and conceal oneself, one was even able to draw support from the strength of the earth to attack, and it was an extremely domineering concept. Whoosh! At this moment, another 3 ancient horned dragons appeared beside the 3 ancient horned dragons above Zhang Shouyang. 6 ancient horned dragon silhouettes floated in midair, as they brandished their claws and bared their fangs and accumulated strength while waiting to attack. Big Brother Zhang's earth force was actually able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense into 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted and he had an astonished expression. Third level earth concept. The pair of twins that stood nearby had long since been dumbstruck by what they'd seen. Now, when they saw this scene, their faces went ghastly pale and their legs started shivering. 353 Chapter 354, The Death of the Withered Old Man. Similarly to the cultivation levels of a martial artist, concept was divided into 9 levels. Each level was stronger than the next. First level concept was comparable the strength of 1 ancient horned dragon. Second level concept was comparable the strength of 2 ancient horned dragons. Third level concept was comparable the strength of 3 ancient horned dragons. So on and so forth. The strongest level of concept, the 9th level concept, was comparable to the strength of 9 ancient horned dragons. Third level earth concept, Duan Lingtian was shocked as well. When he saw the second level void initiation stage cultivation that Zhang Shouyang displayed, his heart was already filled with shock. Now, Zhang Shouyang had actually utilized a third level earth concept. Duan Lingtian didn't even have the chance to recover from his shock when Zhang Shouyang had already taken another stride forward, and in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have completely merged into the earth and vanished without a trace. At this moment, the emaciated figure of the withered old man that stood with an expression of terror in the distance trembled suddenly. Subsequently, his face went deathly pale, as if his neck was forcefully choked by someone. His mouth gaped open, but he wasn't able to say anything even after quite a while. In the next moment, his eyes that flickered with a fierce light had completely dimmed down. Bang! The withered old man's body swayed for a little while before crashing onto the floor. When he fell on the ground, eye-piercing fresh blood that was dazzling and resplendent flowed out of his 7 apertures. The withered old man, a first-level void initiation stage expert. Earlier, he even controlled Duan Lingtian and Li Fei within his hands and was incomparably mighty. But now, a mighty void initiation stage expert like this had crashing onto the ground and died while his 7 apertures bled. The scene before them caused Duan Lingtian and Li Fei to have an unreal feeling. Was this really a void initiation stage expert? At the same time, they were completely shocked by Zhang Shouyang's strength. Although they weren't able to perceive the movements of Zhang Shouyang when he attacked, they knew clearly that all this was related to Zhang Shouyang, who seemed to have merged with the earth and disappeared on the spot in the blink of an eye. Whoosh! Right at this moment, Zhang Shouyang's slovenly figure once again appeared before everyone, and he just happened to be standing before the withered old man's corpse. Zhang Shouyang's gaze calmly glanced at the withered old man, as if he'd only done something of no great importance. Meanwhile, the pair of twin brothers that stood nearby looked at each other, and they could both see the terror within each other's eyes. They'd realized that they'd rammed against a plate of iron. A second-level void initiation stage expert that has comprehended the third-level earth concept. Even in the entire surrounding areas of the ancient city of Everlast, such an existence was still considered to be a top existence. They'd actually encountered such an existence. Flee. The same thought arose within their minds, and they executed their movement techniques in panic to flash out of the restaurant. They wanted to leave this place that caused despair to emerge within their hearts. In this place, they felt that their lives had completely left their own control. Zhang Shouyang's brows lightly twitched. He was about to chase after the two of them when he suddenly perceived something, and a wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth as he lightly shook his head. Suddenly, Zhang Shouyang's figure jerked, and he disappeared on the spot. When he appeared again, he was already by Wang Chong's side. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force that had advanced to the peak of the nascent soul stage shook, and he faintly noticed that someone happened to be flashing over, and the person was going straight for the pair of fleeing twins. Who is it? Right when Duan Lingtian was wondering in his herd, a sylph-like figure appeared before his eyes, and obstructed the path of the twin brothers. Above this person, a lifelike ancient horned dragon lingered there, and another 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes were like twinkling stars around a bright moon as they surrounded the ancient horned dragon silhouette, as if they were worshipping the Supreme Emperor. 9th level void prying stage. The faces of the twin brothers that were stopped went pale as they shouted out in surprise. Leave your lives here. The person voice was extremely pleasing to the ear, and she instantly attacked. Whoosh, whoosh. Her pair of delicate hands flashed out like lightning, seeming to transform into 2 venomous serpents that bit towards the twin brothers and directly twisted their heads off. Kacha! The sound of bones breaking was clearly audible, and caused chills to run down one's spine. Bang, bang! In the wake of her attacks, the bodies of the twins crashed onto the ground, and followed in the withered old man's footsteps. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei glanced at each other, and they both saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. Only because they recognized the woman that had appeared before their eyes to kill the pair of twins. This woman wasn't anyone else but precisely that beautiful manager from the drain pool in opposite of Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian never imagined that this beautiful manager that seemed incomparably weak would actually possess such a terrifying cultivation. The beautiful manager nodded with a smile to Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, then flowing light revolved within her pair of beautiful eyes as she gazed at the faraway Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong, and her gaze mostly descended onto Wang Chong. Zan Kai. Zhang Shouyang nodded to the beautiful manager and greeted indifferently. When faced with Zhang Shouyang's cold and indifferent attitude, the beautiful manager's delicate body trembled imperceptibly, yet it was clearly seen by Duan Lingtian. However, Duan Lingtian knew that this was a private matter of Zhang Shouyang, so he didn't pay any extra attention. He brought Li Fei to stand before Shang Quan, then helped Shang Quan up before letting him sit at the side. Shang Quan, are you all right? Shang Quan shook his head and forced out a smile. I'm fine. Duan Lingtian gave Shang Quan a grade 7 gold injury pill before starting to help him dissolve the medicinal strength. Presently, Shang Quan had lost all his origin energy, and was utterly unable to dissolve the medicinal strength of the pill. In next to no time, under the assistance of Duan Lingtian's origin energy, Shang Quan's injuries had recovered substantially. Although his dantian couldn't recover, his complexion had become much better and it wasn't ghastly pale as before. I understand now. Suddenly, a rather miserable voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian raised his head to look and what he saw was the beautiful manager of Drainpool in sighing before turning around and leaving. That sylph-like and beautiful figure of hers was lonely and desolate, as if she'd lost the most important thing in her life in an instant. Besides that, when Duan Lingtian looked at Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong, he had the feeling that something was different in this husband and wife pair. Before long, he got the answer he was looking for. So it turned out that it was because of Wang Chong. The current Wang Chong didn't lack a shred of confidence. Compared to herself in the past, the current Wang Chong was simply like a completely different person. What happened? Duan Lingtian was puzzled in his heart. It was difficult to imagine how a person could change so greatly in the blink of an eye. Duan Lingtian held Li Fei's hand and walked over to Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong before sincerely thanking. Big brother Zhang, sister-in-law, thank you. His tone was filled with gratitude. Today, if it wasn't for Zhang Shouyang's help, it would be impossible for him and Li Fei to have survived. Little sister Li Fei, you're fine, right? Wang Chong stretched out her delicate hand to seize Li Fei from Duan Lingtian's side, then pulled Li Fei to her side before asking about Li Fei's well-being. Big sister Wang Chong, I'm fine. Li Fei lightly shook her head. Come, we sisters will go talk privately, let's ignore them. Wang Chong brought Li Fei to sit at the side, and they started chatting happily. This caused Duan Lingtian and Zhang Shouyang to glance at each other and smile helplessly. The two of them found a place to sit nearby, and after they sat, Duan Lingtian slightly sighed with emotion. Big brother Zhang, I really never imagined that you're actually a void initiation stage expert. Moreover, you're a void initiation stage expert that had comprehended the 3rd level Earth concept. Zhang Shouyang smiled. It's just luck. Luck. Duan Lingtian shook his head as this was certainly not luck. Zhang Shouyang's comprehension ability that was able to comprehend the third-level Earth concept at such an age caused Duan Lingtian to be shocked. According to the memories of Rebirth Martial Emperor, even in the entire, foreign lands, such comprehension ability could already be considered as pretty good. Big brother Zhang, you're not from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Duan Lingtian asked. No, Zhang Shouyang shook his head. Suddenly, as if he'd thought of something, he looked at Duan Lingtian and revealed a slight smile. Brother Lingtian, thank you. Duan Lingtian was stunned. For what? He couldn't wrap his head around it. It was Zhang Shouyang who saved him earlier, right? Why is he turning around and thanking me? Brother Lingtian, I presume you ought to be curious of the relationship between me and the manager of Drainpool Inn, right? Zhang Shouyang asked. Although he didn't know why Zhang Shouyang would suddenly ask this, but Duan Lingtian still couldn't refrain from nodding. She's called Chen Zonkai, and is my childhood friend, and my clan and hers have been friends for generations. Our clans arranged our marriage together when we were young, she can be said to be my fiancé. Of course, that's all a matter of the past. The moment I left the clan, that marriage became annulled. As Zhang Shouyang spoke, he picked up his wine gourd and poured a mouthful into his mouth. Childhood friend, Duan Lingtian never imagined that Zhang Shouyang would still have this type of relationship with the inn manager. Zhang Shouyang continued, since we were young, I took her as my own sister, and have never thought of having anything happen between us, so, I never cared about the marriage contract. Later on, I met Chong, and we quickly fell into the river of love. Originally, my clan didn't interfere with me and Chong. Although Chong didn't have any background, her natural talent in the martial Dao was extremely superb. However, later on, an accident caused Chong's dantian to be damaged, and she lost all her origin energy. From that moment onwards, my clan started obstructing me and Chong from meeting and wanted to separate us. They even took out that marriage contract to force me. Influenced by my rage, I left the clan. At that time, another bigger problem descended. Chong actually wanted to leave me, just because she felt that since her cultivation was completely lost, she didn't deserve me, and she lost all confidence. For the sake of allowing her to renew her confidence, I brought her far away to this ancient city of Everlast and established the Eternal Jade restaurant with her. As he spoke up to here, a slight smile appeared on Zhang Shouyang's face. Here, I once again saw her smile. Even though she was still so uncertain. In next to no time, the smile on Zhang Shouyang's face transformed into a bitter smile. However, what I never expected was that Zonkai would actually come to this ancient city of Everlast in search of me. 354 Chapter 355, Resurrection Pill. Zhang Shouyang didn't have to say what happened after that, as Duan Lingtian was able to roughly guess what happened. It was nothing but that Chen Zonkai didn't give up. Then, coupled with Wang Chong's own lack of confidence, it caused Chen Zonkai to feel that there was an opportunity to take advantage of. So, Zhang Shouyang and his wife had always been at a standstill with her. Zhang Shouyang spoke in an unrestrained manner. This time, the feelings of you and sister-in-law, not leaving each other even in death, had infected Chong. Chong seemed as if she'd come around in an instant. She didn't feel she didn't deserve me anymore, and her past lack of confidence didn't exist anymore. To the extent that she even took the initiative to suggest wanting to leave the ancient city of Everlast with me and travel around. It was practically impossible for something like this to occur in the past. As he spoke up to here, Zhang Shouyang had an excited expression. Congratulations, big brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he congratulated Zhang Shouyang. Zhang Shouyang continued. Earlier, Zonkai realized that Chong had renewed her confidence, and she knew that she didn't have a chance anymore, so, she came around and will be leaving within the next few days. This time, you and sister-in-law have really done me a great service. Otherwise, if Zonkai was really allowed to continue on like this for a few more years, I don't know how guilty I would feel. Duan Lingtian nodded. 1 hour later, Duan Lingtian, Li Fei, and Shangquan left the ancient city of Everlast again. But there were another two people beside them. It was precisely the husband and wife pair, Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong. Duan Lingtian gave away his Fergana horse to Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong, and he sat on the Fergana horse with Li Fei. Duan Lingtian hugged Li Fei as he spurred the horse forward. Currently, Zhang Shouyang had changed into clean clothes and he didn't possess the slovenly appearance from before. Moreover, the stubble on his face was already shaved, making him look elegant and unrestrained. However, a wine gourd still hung on his waist. This wine gourd was like his treasure that never left his side. Big Brother Zhang, why does the wine in this gourd seem as if it can't be finished? Half a month later, Duan Lingtian was finally unable to refrain from asking. During this half-month, he could be sure that Zhang Shouyang hadn't replenished the wine in the wine gourd. His wine gourd was like a bottomless pit that contained wine that couldn't be drunk to the bottom. Zhang Shouyang was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian's question, then he couldn't help but burst into laughter. Brother Lingtian, the wine gourd of your big brother Zhang isn't any ordinary gourd, this is a grade 5 spirit weapon, and it's able to contain 10,000 pounds of wine. Wang Chong lightly smiled as she explained to Duan Lingtian. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Wang Chong spoke casually, but when it entered Duan Lingtian's ears, it was instead like a thunderclap. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Li Fei, who sat before Duan Lingtian and lay on his chest, couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, then her beautiful eyes flickered with a gleam of disbelief as she gazed at the wine gourd in Zhang Shouyang's hands. Shang Quan, who spurred his horse in the lead, was slightly moved as well and was shocked. I've really misjudged it. Duan Lingtian sighed with emotion. Now, when his spiritual force extended out, he was able to notice that the wine gourd in Zhang Shouyang's hand was indeed a grade 5 spirit weapon. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian's mood surged. According to his knowledge, even throughout the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, this grade 5 spirit weapons was still in existence like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. The 7-star sword sect he joined was one of the top sects in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. However, a formidable sect like this seemed to only have one grade 5 spirit weapon, a grade 5 spirit sword. Supposedly, this grade 5 spirit sword was in the sect leader's control. That grade 5 spirit sword was the 7-star sword sect leader's sword for generations and generations. Besides being able to store wine, this wine gourd is probably an extremely formidable offensive spirit weapon as well. Duan Lingtian was able to notice the difference in this wine gourd. Unlike the spatial ring, which was a spirit weapon purely used for storage, the wine gourd still carried along traces of killing intent. This was the killing intent that only an offensive spirit weapon would possess. Grade 5 spirit weapon. There are extremely few within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Even if it's the empire that surpassed the Imperial Kingdom, there probably wouldn't be many as well. Could it be that Big Brother Zhang is from the Darkstone Empire? Duan Lingtian secretly guessed in his heart. Along the way, he tried to ask Zhang Shouyang about his background, but Zhang Shouyang would only laugh it off, then say that he wasn't related to the past any longer and didn't want to mention it. Duan Lingtian could feel the aloofness and resoluteness in Zhang Shouyang's tone. It looked like the clan of this big brother Zhang of his had hurt Zhang Shouyang greatly. Zhang Shouyang wasn't willing to say anything, so Duan Lingtian naturally didn't ask anymore. This also caused the background of Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong to become a riddle in his eyes. Big brother Zhang, sister-in-law, do you two have any plans? Duan Lingtian asked. We don't have any specific plans for now. But, we should be going to take a spin around the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, so we'll send you and sister-in-law back to the 7-star sword sect before we make any plans. Zhang Shouyang lightly smiled. A trace of warmth flowed within Duan Lingtian's heart. He naturally knew Zhang Shouyang's intentions. It was undoubtedly wanting to escort him and Li Fei back to the 7-star sword sect. After all, now, Shang Quan's cultivation was different from before. Even if it was a first-level void-prying stage martial artist, so long as the person used a spirit weapon, then Shang Quan wouldn't be a match. Although Shang Quan was able to execute the advanced sword force that's comparable to the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths, the strength bestowed by the advanced sword force was unable to be amplified by a spirit weapon. A spirit weapon was only able to amplify the strength of the body and origin energy. Currently, Shang Quan had lost all his origin energy, and only a 9th-level body tempering stage cultivation remained in him. When the strength of his body exploded out completely, it would only be comparable to the strength of one ancient mammoth. Even if he did utilize a grade 7 spirit sword and obtain the amplification from it, Shang Quan's strength wouldn't even reach the strength of 2 ancient mammoths. Shang Quan, Duan Lingtian sighed, then looked at Shang Quan, who rode his horse in the front, and asked. Shang Quan, what plans do you have? Shang Quan took a deep breath when he heard this, then said slowly, Young master, with my current strength, I can't help you with anything. I want to return to my hometown. Shang Quan's tone carried slight bitterness within. Then we'll send you back to your hometown. Duan Lingtian nodded. he respected Shang Quan's choice. He'd already decided in his heart that he would surely help Shang Quan restore his Dantian in the future. Restore a Dantian. If anyone knew of Duan Lingtian's current thoughts, they would surely insult Duan Lingtian as a madman and think Duan Lingtian was indulging in the wildest of fantasies. After all, once the Dantian was damaged, even if one consumed the best healing medicine in the entire Cloud Continent, the Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill, it would still be powerless to save the person's Dantian. This was a fact that was publicly acknowledged within Cloud Continent. Once the Dantian was crippled, one's life was over. This was an iron law. However, as the person who'd merged with the memories of rebirth Martial Emperor, Duan Lingtian wouldn't care about these so-called iron laws. According to the memories of rebirth Martial Emperor, there were 2 ways that could restore a crippled Dantian. The first, find a legendary medicinal herb called the Immortal Spirit Herb. The Immortal Spirit Herb only existed in legends, and even the rebirth Martial Emperor had only heard of it, but not seen it. Allegedly, the Immortal Spirit Herb was able to cause a cripple to regrow his limbs. Its medicinal strength could be called heaven-defying. The second, was to become a quasi-royal grade alchemist, and refine a quasi-royal grade resurrection pill. The quasi-royal grade resurrection pill was a healing medicine that surpassed the Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill. Within the Cloud Continent, people only knew that the best healing medicine was the Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill. They didn't know that since long ago, the rebirth Martial Emperor had refined the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill and the royal grade resurrection pill surpassed the Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill. No matter how serious the injury was, so long as the heart hadn't stopped beating, then they could be saved by consuming the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill. As for the royal grade resurrection pill, it was even more exaggerated. Even if the heart had stopped beating, so long as it hadn't stopped for more than an hour, then the person could be saved by consuming a royal grade resurrection pill. That Immortal Spirit Herb is too impractical. Looks like I have to wait until I arrive at the foreign lands and obtain the great treasure that the rebirth Martial Emperor left for his 3rd lifetime to be able to help Shang Quan restore his Dantian. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. Within the pile of treasures that the rebirth Martial Emperor had prepared for his 3rd lifetime, the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill and royal grade resurrection pill were amongst them. After spending an entire month of galloping the whole way, Duan Lingtian's group had finally arrived at Shang Quan's hometown. Shang Quan's hometown was situated within a group of mountains, and it was considered a remote village. Shang Quan, you grew up here. Duan Lingtian looked at the remote village and couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. It was difficult for him to imagine how Shang Quan, the formed guardian elder of the Boundless Sect, had such an ordinary and common birth. Yes, Shang Quan nodded, and he was slightly excited as he looked at the faraway village. Duan Lingtian's group had only just entered the village when they were noticed. It's Uncle Shang Quan. In next to no time, a 12 or 13-year-old youth with sharp eyes had recognized Shang Quan and he exclaimed in shock before dashing over. Uncle Shang Quan! Uncle Shang Quan! You are! Shang Quan was stunned as he gazed at the youth that leapt into his embrace. Uncle Shang Quan, you don't recognize me. I'm Erhu. The youth raised his head and looked at Shang Quan with an excited expression. You're Erhu. Shang Quan was stunned then couldn't help but laugh as he rubbed the youth's little head. Erhu, we've only not seen each other for a few years and you've already grown so big. The youth laughed slyly. Uncle Shang Quan, I was only 7 when you left the last time. Is everyone in the village still well? Shang Quan asked. The youth nodded hastily. Everyone is fine, just that we usually slightly miss Uncle Shang Quan, HMPH. I'm going to become an outstanding martial artist like Uncle Shang Quan in the future, then enter the Boundless Sect and become a great guardian like Uncle Shang Quan. The youth's naive appearance caused Duan Lingtian, Li Fei, Zhang Shouyang, and Wang Chong to be unable to refrain from smiling. Then you have to work hard, Erhu. Shang Quan smiled as he encouraged, yet a trace of misery flashed deep within his eyes. Shang Quan, Uncle Shang Quan, comma. Before long, a crowd of people poured out of the village and they were incredibly fervent. Duan Lingtian's thought inwardly when he saw this scene. Looks like after Shang Quan became the guardian elder of the Boundless Sect, he didn't forget his own hometown. These villagers all respect him from the bottom of their hearts. 355 Chapter 356, 9th Level Origin Core Stage. Shang Quan relied on his own hard work to grow into the guardian elder of the Boundless Sect from a kid that grew up in the mountains. This was a shocking feat. Moreover, after he'd become the guardian elder of the Boundless Sect, Shang Quan was able to remember his roots and take care of his own hometown, and this was even more difficult to come by. He was truly respectable. It was precisely because of this that Shang Quan was able to obtain the acknowledgement of all the villagers in his hometown. Because of their relationship with Shang Quan, the villagers' love for Shang Quan extended onto Duan Lingtian's group, and they obtained an extremely passionate welcome from the villagers. After staying in the village for a few days and enjoying the rural life, Duan Lingtian's group were prepared to leave. Before they left, Duan Lingtian went to meet Shang Quan. Shang Quan, this is the antidote. In the future, you don't have to worry about the poison in your body recurring every 6 months, as this antidote is sufficient to completely remove the poison within your body. Duan Lingtian withdrew a medicinal pill and passed it to Shang Quan. That day, for the sake of controlling Shang Quan, he'd added poison into the grade 9 spirit cleansing pill he gave Shang Quan. It was a type of slow poison, and so long as one didn't consume the antidote for a period of time that's more than 6 months, then one would undoubtedly die. Now, Duan Lingtian gave Shang Quan the antidote to completely remove that poison. Thank you, young master. Shang Quan took a deep breath before accepting the medicinal pill and consuming it, then he said sincerely. Young master, Shang Quan can't be by your side in the future, so you must take good care of yourself, and protect yourself well. Young master doesn't have to feel guilty about what has happened to me, as everything is fate. Fate? Duan Lingtian shook his head. Shang Quan, let me ask you, what is fate? Shang Quan was dumbstruck when he heard this. He didn't know how to explain it. Shang Quan, remember this. Never ever believe in the so-called fate. Now, although your Dantian has been crippled, your advanced sword force is still present. Since you've opened the door to force, even if you don't have your origin energy, you're still able to continue comprehending the sword concept. Duan Lingtian slowly said to Shang Quan. It's all not important anymore. Shang Quan shook his head and smiled, seeming extremely free and easy. Without origin energy, even if he comprehended sword concept, what good would that do? At most, the sword in his hand and his attacks would be formidable. In terms of speed, he would be no different than a 9th-level body tempering stage martial artist. Duan Lingtian had a serious expression as he said to Shang Quan. Shang Quan, I know that your Dantian being crippled has caused you to be without hope, but, I still want to tell you that I have a way to restore your Dantian. What? Shang Quan was startled by what Duan Lingtian said, and he was like a frightened bird as he asked. Young master, you said you have a way to restore my crippled Dantian. Is it true? Currently, Shang Quan had lost his previous composure and his free and easy appearance. He instead had an excited expression and had forgotten himself. The only reason he feigned such an appearance earlier was because he didn't want Duan Lingtian to be worried and guilty. Actually, his heart hadn't walked out from the shadow of his Dantian being crippled since the beginning. After living together with Duan Lingtian for these few years, Duan Lingtian had never once taken him to be a servant because of the poison that controlled him, and instead, Duan Lingtian had taken him to be like a family member. This caused him to have always had gratitude in his heart. Now even when he wasn't controlled by the poison, he still tried his best to be considerate of Duan Lingtian. You've followed me for a few years, have I ever said something meaningless? Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by Shang Quan's excitement, as if there was a choice, then no one would choose to become a cripple. Shang Quan's face flushed red when he obtained confirmation from Duan Lingtian and he was extremely excited. However, even though I have a way to restore your Dantian, I'm afraid it will still require some time. It will take anywhere from 5 to even 10 plus years. Duan Lingtian poured a bucket of cold water when he saw Shang Quan being so excited. But, Shang Quan paid no attention to it, and he grinned. Young master, I can wait. Duan Lingtian nodded, then patted Shang Quan on the shoulder. Then I'll be leaving first, you don't have to send me off. Work hard in comprehending your advanced sword force. With your comprehension ability, comprehending sword concept isn't difficult. I hope that when I see you next, you would have already comprehended sword concept. I will, young master. I will absolutely not let you down. Shang Quan hurriedly nodded. Duan Lingtian smiled in satisfaction, then turned around and left. He converged with Li Fei, Zhang Shouyang, and Wang Chong before leaving the remote mountains. Scoundrel, are you still thinking about Shang Quan? Li Fei couldn't refrain from asking when she noticed Duan Lingtian being silent all the way. Duan Lingtian sighed. I am responsible for what happened to Shang Quan. Li Fei held Duan Lingtian's hand and consoled. Don't blame yourself, you were helpless at that time as well, that withered old man was too strong. However, Big Brother Zhang has killed that withered old man and it can be considered to have taken revenge for Shang Quan. Duan Lingtian nodded then looked at the young man on the other Fergana horse. Big Brother Zhang, thank you. Zhang Shouyang shook his head and smiled. Brother Lingtian, don't mention it, that day, when I saw you for the first time in Drainpool Inn, I felt as if I'd met an old friend. The facts prove that our tempers agree with each other and we were bound to become friends. Yeah, Wang Chong who sat in front of Zhang Shouyang nodded. I and little sister Li Fei hit off well from the beginning as well, and I've taken her to be my own younger sister in my heart. You're not allowed to bully her in the future. Otherwise, even though I'm not a match for you, I'm able to ask Brother Yang to help me teach you a lesson. As she finished speaking, Wang Chong's contained a slight protective tone. Then wouldn't I be fully controlled by this little girl in the future? Duan Lingtian exaggerated with a laugh. HMPH. Scoundrel, let's see if you dare bully me in the future. Wang Chong's words caused Li Fei to beam, and her beautiful face held a complacent expression. In the following leg of the journey, Duan Lingtian's group of 4 didn't travel quickly as they wandered about to enjoy the beauties of nature all along the way towards the 7-star sword sect. An event worthy of mention was that when they were about to arrive at Black Bamboo City, Duan Lingtian's cultivation broke through once again. The 9th level of the Origin Core stage. Presently, I've broken through to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage and my strength is comparable to the strength of 131 ancient mammoths. Compared to an ordinary 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist, I possess an extra strength of 11 ancient mammoths. The 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique's 3rd form, the Worm Python form, has finally attained perfection. The scope of effect of the Quake energy has already advanced to the limit as well. So long as the strength of my opponent doesn't exceed my own strength by the strength of 100 ancient mammoths, then I'm not afraid. Since he broke through, Duan Lingtian's mood was always slightly agitated. Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian's gaze flickered with a cold light, and a cold smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. When I return this time, it's time to properly settle the accounts between us. That day, Lu Shizhe had heavily injured him and even knocked him out. He'd always taken this to be a humiliation. He hoped that one day, he would be able to rely on his own strength to make Lu Shizhe pay 10-fold, no, 100-fold. Now, although he hadn't broken through to the nascent soul stage, after his cultivation stepped into the 9th level of the Origin Core stage he was already unafraid of an ordinary 1st-level nascent soul stage martial artist. So long as Lu Shizhe hasn't broken through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage, then my current strength is completely sufficient to completely destroy him. As Duan Lingtian thought about this, his eyes emitted a trace of yearning. When he returned to his senses, Duan Lingtian smelt the fragrance of Li Fei's hair and felt the strong breeze that blew at him while the horse galloped forward, and his eyes slightly narrowed as an extremely gentle expression appeared on his face. Presently, it had already been an entire year since he left the 7-star sword sect. This time, not only had his cultivation broken through once again, Li Fei's cultivation had broken through half a month ago to advance to the 7th level of the Origin Core stage. Of course, the reason Li Fei's advancement was so swift, following closely behind Duan Lingtian's footsteps, was because of the 10,000-year stalactite milk she'd consumed that time. Presently, Li Fei's natural talent in the martial Dao was similar to Duan Lingtian and had arrived at the limit of what a martial artist could arrive at. 1 year had passed. Duan Lingtian was already 21. Zhang Shouyang's gaze descended onto the small black dot in the distance as he asked slowly. Brother Lingtian, the city ahead is Black Bamboo City. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. He knew that arriving at Black Bamboo City would also mean that they were about to go their separate ways from Zhang Shouyang and his wife. On the journey here, he, Li Fei, Zhang Shouyang, and Wang Chong had formed a deep friendship. Reluctance was hard to avoid. After we've arrived at Black Bamboo City, we'll have a meal together. Zhang Shouyang looked at Li Fei and Duan Lingtian as he suggested. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei naturally had no objections. Wang Chong said to Li Fei with a face covered in tender affection, "Little sister Li Fei, I'll surely come visit you with Brother Yang when I'm free in the future." Li Fei's beautiful eyes became faintly misty as she said in a light voice, "Big sister Wang Chong, I'll miss you." Duan Lingtian consoled Li Fei. "All right, all good things must come to an end, cheer up." What's more, it isn't like there isn't a chance to meet again in the future. Besides that, we have to eat together in a while, and your current appearance will surely cause Big Sister Wang Chong to feel bad when she sees it. Li Fei lightly nodded and she was barely able to force out a trace of a smile. During this half-year, she and Wang Chong had hit off from the beginning and were close like sisters. Now that they were about to separate, she was naturally extremely reluctant. The small black dot far away gradually became bigger, and in the end it transformed into a city. This city stood in the distance. It was like it had transformed into an enormous beast that swallowed the streams of wagons and people that entered. After Duan Lingtian's group of 4 entered the city, they casually found a restaurant before finding a place that was adjacent to the window. Subsequently, they ordered their food. Brother Lingtian, they seem to be looking at you. Suddenly, Zhang Shouyang's voice entered into Duan Lingtian's ears. Only now did Duan Lingtian notice that the crowd of customers within the restaurant were all looking at him with a slightly strange gaze. Actually, he'd noticed when he'd just entered the city that some people seemed as if they'd seen money when they saw him, as their eyes gleamed and they had greedy expressions. What's going on? Duan Lingtian completely didn't know what had happened. Shi Clan Estate. Patriarch, I want to see the Patriarch. An incomparably swift figure flashed into the Shi Clan Estate, then dashed violently all the way to finally charge to the Shi Clan Audience Hall. Within the Shi Clan Audience Hall, an old man in embroidered clothes had a cold expression as he gazed indifferently at the middle-aged man before him and asked. There still isn't any news of that Duan Lingtian lately. The middle-aged man was precisely the patriarch of the Shi Clan, Shi Li. 356 Chapter 357, Heaven Encompassing Net. Lord Shadow, Shi Li had a bitter expression. I sent some people to the 7-Star Sword Sect to find out about him. 1 year ago, Duan Lingtian left the 7-Star Sword Sect and hasn't returned since. Shadow, the vice president of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Jade Magnolia Trading Company. A 6th-level void-prying stage existence. Even if he was the patriarch of the Shi Clan, he was only a void-prying stage expert, a 1st-level void-prying stage. If Shi Hao wasn't killed by Duan Lingtian, then he would have surely been able to become the Shi Clan's 2nd void-prying stage expert with his natural talent. As he thought up to this point, Shi Li's face sank. You told me this yesterday. Shadow swept Shi Li with an indifferent gaze. Have you found out where he went? Shi Li shook his head. Not for now. Don't worry Lord Shadow, Duan Lingtian also crippled the cultivation of my daughter and killed my son. I, Shi Li, am irreconcilable enemies with him. So long as I have news about him, I would surely notify Lord Shadow at the first possible moment. Shadow's arrival had allowed Shi Li to see hope for taking revenge. In the past, although he knew that his son, Shi Hao, was killed Duan Lingtian, but he didn't dare act rashly. Because Duan Lingtian was an outstanding disciple of the 7-Star Sword Sect. The Shi Clan wouldn't allow him to take a risk for a personal enmity, and draw calamity for the Shi Clan. However, some time ago, this vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, Shadow, had come over in a threatening manner with a drawing in hand, and this picture allowed him to see hope. His daughter Shi Yan recognized it with a glance. The young man within the drawing Shadow possessed was precisely Duan Lingtian. In this way, he invited Shadow into the Shi Clan estate to plan their vengeance together. Duan Lingtian, it's you who deserve death. You actually dared to kill Lord Shadow's only son. Cold lights flickered within Shi Li's eyes, and a small sneer appeared on the corners of his mouth. Patriarch, Patriarch. Right at this moment, a figure that was in a hurry charged into the audience hall before reporting his arrival. Shadow frowned when he saw the Shi Clan disciple directly charge in, and he grunted coldly. Patriarch Shi Li, looks like your Shi Clan's rules are nothing much. Could it be that this Shi Clan audience hall can be casually entered by anyone? Shi Li was slightly embarrassed and looked at the Shi Clan disciple as he asked in a low voice. Why are you in such a hurry? Patriarch, the Shi Clan disciple said excitedly, the person in the drawing has appeared. Bang! The instant Shi Li's pupils constricted, Shadow sat beside him and had just picked up a teacup to take a sip. Shadow's body trembled and the teacup in his hand was directly smashed into pieces by his grip. Shadow stood up and looked at the Shi Clan disciple as he shouted. You said the person in the drawing has appeared. The Shi Clan disciple hurriedly nodded. Yes, I saw him enter the city with my own 2 eyes. Patriarch, Patriarch, Meanwhile, numerous figures had flashed into the audience hall. My cousin brother noticed that young man in the drawing at the Tranquil Elegance restaurant. My friend noticed him as well. I too saw him with my own two eyes. These Shi clan disciples were similarly providing information like the Shi clan disciple before him. Good, good, Sha Do laughed heartily, and the imposing manner on his body surged. Although he didn't stretch it out intentionally, but it still caused the expressions of the Shi clan disciples that were present to go ghastly pale, and their bodies shivered. Guang, father will go take revenge for you now. Sha Do's voice was like a thunderclap, shocking the Shi clan audience hall to the point it seemed as if it swayed. After eating their fill, Duan Ling Tian's group of 4 left the restaurant, then spurred their horses out of Black Bamboo City. On the way, Duan Ling Tian's brows knit. His spiritual force told him that there were currently numerous people who were spying on him from the shadows and were following him. Zhang Shouyang looked at Duan Ling Tian as he lightly smiled and said, Brother Ling Tian, the 7 great sword peaks of the 7-star sword sect are like thunder piercing the ear to me as well. I and Chong will send you to the 7-star sword sect and also look at the elegant appearance of the 7 great sword peaks on the way. How about it? Okay. Duan Ling Tian nodded and lightly smiled, and his smile contained gratitude mixed within. He knew in his heart that Zhang Shouyang made such a decision because Zhang Shouyang had surely noticed the people following him. Then let's go slowly, I still want to chat with big sister Wang Chong. We don't know when we'll meet again. Li Fei's beautiful eyes flashed and it suffused with a sheen of reluctance as she suggested. Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyang nodded. Their group of 4, 2 Fergana horses, walked out of Black Bamboo City and headed directly towards the 7-star sword sect. Because of Li Fei's suggestion, Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyang had both decreased their speeds and didn't spur their horses into a gallop. Before they parted, Li Fei and Wang Chong chatted happily to their heart's content. Black Bamboo City wasn't far from the 7-star sword sect, and even when they slowed down, Duan Ling Tian's group of 4 had already traveled halfway there after half an hour. The 7-star sword sect really does deserve its reputation. Zhang Shouyang gazed at the 7 sword peaks that stood in the distance and he couldn't help but praise them. I heard a long time ago that the 7-star sword sect possessed 7 great sword peaks, and it's one of the great wonders of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Now that I've seen it today, it truly does deserve its reputation. Wang Chong deeply agreed and nodded. Perhaps, any one of the peaks of the 7 great sword peaks were inferior to the solitary summit that was nearby the ancient city of Everlast. However, when the 7 great sword peaks were gathered together and stood there, it gave people a shocking sight to behold. The 7 great sword peaks were like 7 sharp swords that shot up into the heavens. As if it wanted to pierce 7 holes through the heavens. Right at this moment, thump, 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 a string of dense sounds of horse hooves hitting the group interrupted the pate of husband and wife who were enjoying the sight of the 7 great sword peaks. Zhang Shouyang's face sank as cold lights flickered in his eyes. A trace of displeasure arose on Wang Chong's beautiful face as well. When Duan Ling Tian and Zhang Shouyang turned their horses around, they could see over 10 sturdy horses dashing over with 3 Fergana horses in the lead, and they galloped straight towards the location of Duan Ling Tian's group. Halt, halt, in next to no time, the people who sat on the 10 over sturdy horses had surrounded Duan Ling Tian's group of 4, as if they'd transformed into a heaven-encompassing net, causing Duan Ling Tian's group to have nowhere to escape. Shi Yan, Li Fei's sharp eyes noticed the woman by the dignified middle-aged man's side with a single glance. The woman had distorted and hideous features, and her pair of triangular eyes flickered with a gloomy sheen. It was precisely the formed Alcade Peak disciple, Shi Yan. The Shi Yan that was crippled by Duan Ling Tian. The Shi Yan that was the younger sister of the formed number 1 disciple in the outer court, Shi Hao. By H. Shi Yan gazed at Li Fei and her triangular eyes emitted a frightful icy coldness. Today, you and your man will die, you crippled my cultivation and killed my brother, none of you will be able to escape today. Shi Yao's voice was filled with gloominess. Wang Chong's beautiful face went grim when she heard Shi Yan insult Li Fei and she said in a low voice, watch your words. What does me insulting this by H have to do with you? Shi Yao coldly swept Wang Chong with her gaze, then grunted. Today, you can only blame yourself and your man for being unfortunate to actually be together with these 2 jinxes, you 2 are bound to be implicated by them. Zhang Shouyang who sat behind Wang Chong has a calm expression as he asked indifferently. What you mean is you want to kill all 4 of us? Right when Shi Yan intended to speak. Exactly, all 3 of you will die with Duan Ling Tian today. An aged voice sounded out, and extreme coldness and indifference was mixed within the voice. It was the embroidered clothed old man on the Fergana horse that spoke. The current group of people seemed to be following the lead of this old man. This person, Duan Lingtian frowned as he gazed at the old man in embroidered clothes. He kept having the feeling that the old man was slightly familiar, but he could be sure that he'd never seen the old man before. If he'd met the old man before, it would be impossible that he didn't have an impression of the old man at all. Relying on his formidable spiritual force and the lifetime experience of the rebirth martial emperor, Duan Lingtian was able to discern that the old man's cultivation ought to be at the 6th level of the void-prying stage. Zhang Shouyang's calm expression slightly sank when he heard the old man. A void-prying stage martial artist dared talk nonsense before him. Duan Lingtian. Meanwhile, the dignified middle-aged man beside Shi Yan glared angrily at Duan Lingtian as he said coldly, "First, you crippled my daughter's cultivation, and later on you even killed my son, Shi Hao. Today, I, Shi Li, will make your blood splatter on the ground." "You're Shi Hao's father." Duan Lingtian glanced at the dignified middle-aged man with an indifferent gaze, then his gaze descended onto the old man in embroidered clothes. "You're also taking revenge for Shi Hao." The old man in embroidered clothes hadn't even opened his mouth when Shi Li had already sneered and said, "Duan Lingtian, this is Lord Shado, and he the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. I truly never expected that you actually dared kill the son of Lord Shado, simply audacious." Jade Magnolia Trading Company's vice president. Shado. Duan Lingtian frowned, he seemed to have heard of this somewhere. "Scoundrel, Black Wind City." Li Fei reminded. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding as he recalled what happened there. That day, he'd only just left the Crimson Sky Kingdom, and when he passed the Black Wind City that was at the border between the Crimson Sky Kingdom and the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he'd participated in an auction. After the auction ended, there was someone who coveted the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse he'd won in the auction. Later on, that person and the 2 old men by that person's side were killed by Shang Quan. That person seemed to be the person in charge of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company's branch in Black Wind City. "You're Sha Guang's father." Duan Lingtian looked at the old man in embroidered clothes, as he still clearly remembered the name from that day. "Exactly, I'm Sha Guang's father, Sha Do." Sha Do's gaze was incomparably icy cold and contained boundless killing intent. "Looks like you still remember my son you killed. I've been looking for you for an entire year and finally found a lead in Black Bamboo City. Looks like even the heavens want to allow me to take revenge for my son." As he finished speaking, Sha Do's face flushed red and he was extremely excited. He stared at Duan Lingtian with a gaze that was as if he was looking at a dead man. Duan Lingtian looked at Sha Do as he asked in a low voice. "Sha Do, you're the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company in any case. Could it be that you don't want to know why I killed your son that day?" That day, if it wasn't for Sha Guang coveting the jade-eyed heavenly mouse in his possession and colluding with the people from the Ma clan auction house, wanting to kill them and seize the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse, he wouldn't have made Shang Quan kill Sha Guang. As far as he was concerned, Sha Guang brought all this onto himself. Sha Guang deserved death. 357 Chapter 358, The Death of Shi Li. Sha Do snorted coldly when he heard Duan Lingtian. Then he said with a sunken face, "I don't care why you killed my son, I only know that regardless of who, if they kill my son, then they must be prepared to pay in blood. Even if the Son of God killed my son, I, Sha Do, would still tear him to pieces. Even if it's your son who was in the wrong, even if your son was the first to arouse an intent to kill, you don't care. You don't think that it's because you didn't educate your son well." Duan Lingtian gazed at Sha Do with an even colder gaze. "Yes." Sha Do's eyes flickered with cold lights as he said angrily, "Even if my son commits all sorts of crimes, no one can touch him, only because he is the son of Sha Do, the son of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company's vice president." Haha, Duan Lingtian couldn't refrain from laughing when he heard Sha Do. As expected, like father like son. He's the son of you, the Jade Magnolia Trading Company's vice president, so his life is more precious than others. Of course, as far as I'm concerned, his life is priceless. As for others, at least the life of you, Duan Lingtian, is no different from lowly grass in my eyes. Sha Do's voice contained traces of ruthlessness mixed within. No different from lowly grass. Cold lights flickered within Duan Lingtian's eyes. If he possessed the strength to kill Sha Do now, then he would kill Sha Do without the slightest hesitation. Do you really think that the life of your son is a life, but the life of others isn't a life? What a notion of being no different from lowly grass. Zhang Shouyang looked at Shado and shouted coldly. Presently, slight rage had appeared within the eyes of this young man who had a calm expression. Who are you to dare be presumptuous before Lord Shado? Shi Li's face sank. He wanted to show off before Shado, so he stomped his feet on the ground and his entire body seemed to transform into a bolt of lightning as he flashed towards Zhang Shouyang. Whoosh! At the same time that Shi Li flashed out, 1,500 ancient mammoths appeared out of thin air above him. Half-step void stage. They saw Shi Li shouting explosively and charging at Zhang Shouyang. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Li Fei was stunned as well. As far as they were concerned, Shi Li was simply courting death. A half-step void stage martial artist was strong in their eyes, but in the eyes of Big Brother Zhang, he was no different than an ant. After all, even a formidable first-level void initiation stage expert like the withered old man was instantly killed by Zhang Shouyang. A mere half-step void stage, a martial artist that hadn't even stepped into the void prying stage was nothing before Zhang Shouyang. A spirit saber suddenly appeared in the hands of Shi Li, who seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning as he flashed out, and saber lights revolved on the saber. Dazzling and resplendent. For a moment, another 400 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes above Shi Li. Grade 7 Spirit Saber. Shi Li's hand shook. Instantly. The Grade 7 Spirit Saber in Shi Li's hand instantly transformed into saber lights that covered the sky, like a net made of sabers that swept towards Zhang Shouyang with an imposing manner that shot through the sky like a rainbow. Whereas Wang Chong, who was in front of Zhang Shouyang, had become its first target. If he wanted to harm Zhang Shouyang, then he would have to first clear of the obstruction which was Wang Chong. Although Wang Chong's cultivation was only at the 9th level of the body tempering stage and didn't possess a shred of origin energy, when she was faced with the saber light net that covered the sky as it approached with Shi Li, she was not afraid in the slightest. Her expression was calm, as if she didn't pay any attention to the scene unfolding before her eyes. Because she knew that she had a formidable person by her side to support her. So long as that person was present, she would be fine. Shi Li is dead. When he saw Shi Li attacking Wang Chong, Duan Lingtian had already given Shi Li the death penalty in his heart. Just like Li Fei was his reverse scale, Wang Chong was Zhang Shouyang's reverse scale. Shi Li actually dared make a move against Wang Chong. He's simply courting death. Just as if he was responding to Duan Lingtian's thoughts, Zhang Shouyang's face swiftly became gloomy at the instant when Shi Li made a move and executed saber lights that covered the sky as they swept towards Wang Chong. You're courting death. Zhang Shouyang's voice was chilly and carried with it a frightful killing intent, and when his voice entered the ears of everyone present, it caused them to feel a chill run down their spines. In the next moment, whoosh, everyone only heard an ear-piercing sound howl of the wind, and accompanying it was a string of sounds of air exploding that were like thunderclaps. At practically the same instant, bang, everyone clearly saw that the body of Shi Li, who approached menacingly, had stopped in midair, then blew up in the blink of an eye. Blood and flesh splattered in the sky, and not a single complete piece of Shi Li's body could be seen. Obviously, he was blasted by an extremely terrifying force. Silence. The entire scene was deathly silent. The group of people surrounding Duan Lingtian's group, including Shado, at this moment, they seemed as if their throats were choked by someone and their faces flushed red. Their eyes contained a sheen of extreme terror mixed within. An existence at the half-step void stage was directly blasted to the death in the blink of an eye, before they could even react to the attack. Duan Lingtian gazed at this scene calmly as he didn't feel surprised at all. What a joke! This Big Brother Zhang was an existence at the 2nd level of the void initiation stage. A mere half-step void stage martial artist dared be presumptuous before Big Brother Zhang. Virtually courting death. Li Fei's beautiful face seemed ghastly pale as she was frightened by Big Brother Zhang's methods. Although she didn't see clearly how Zhang Shouyang attacked, she saw the scene of Shi Li's body being blown apart by the terrifying force. When Shi Li was killed, he even didn't have the chance to let out a shrill cry. Everything happened too quickly, quick to the point that it was shocking. Father! Shi Yan's body lightly trembled as she gazed at the pieces of Shi Li's body that covered the ground, her triangular eyes flickering with despair and astonishment. Her expression was filled with disbelief. Her father had died just like that. No, impossible. For a time, Shi Yan was slightly battered out of her wits. whereas the others were jolted awake from their shock by Xian. Hiss, 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 numerous sounds of gasping rose and fell, causing the slightly oppressive atmosphere of the current scene to stand out. Even Shadow, the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Company, an existence at the 6th level of the void-prying stage, now looked at Zhang Shouyang with a gaze that carried traces of terror. Earlier, he was completely unable to see clearly how this young man had attacked. It was too fast to the point his eyes wasn't able to catch the movements. Shadow understood that this was a dangerous figure. Shadow's heart sank. He looked at Zhang Shouyang and cupped his fist. Sir, I'm the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, Shadow. Today, this is a matter of private enmity between me and this Duan Lingtian. I hope that you don't interfere in this. I, Shadow, and even the entire Jade Magnolia Trading Company, will owe you a debt of gratitude. Now, Shadow brought out the Jade Magnolia Trading Company to oppress Zhang Shouyang, as he wanted Zhang Shouyang to have some scruples and retreat in the face of difficulties. As far as Shadow was concerned, the Jade Magnolia Trading Company still had a certain level of sway within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. But unfortunately, Shadow was bound to be disappointed. Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Duan Lingtian knew Shadow's intention as soon as he heard Shadow's words, and he couldn't help but snicker. Could it be that this Shadow thinks that Big Brother Zhang would be afraid of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company behind him? Moreover, Shadow. Duan Lingtian looked at Shadow, and a wisp of ridicule appeared on the corners of his mouth. You're just a vice president, but you dare spread word that you're able to represent the entire Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Laughable. You. Shadow's face sank as cold lights shot out from his eyes, and he wished for nothing more than to directly kill Duan Lingtian. However, the young man who caused extreme fear in him had not made his position known, so, even if he hated Duan Lingtian anymore, he could only grit his teeth and endure it, as he didn't dare make a move. The strength of that young man was too terrifying. According to his estimations, it was at least at the 7th level of the void-prying stage. It was far from something he could compare to. HMPH. Finally, Zhang Shouyang gave Shadow a reply, a cold snort. Though Shadow didn't know what Zhang Shouyang meant by this, he saw Zhang Shouyang move, disappearing into thin air above the Fergana horse. In the next moment, an ear-piercing and awe-inspiring howl of the wind swept out into the surroundings. He could vaguely see that there were 3 enormous silhouettes in the sky, flashing as they made a circle in the sky in the blink of an eye. When these 3 enormous silhouettes entered into Shadow's eyes, it caused his expression to become incomparably deathly pale. Second level void initiation stage. As a 6th level void-prying stage martial artist, he could clearly feel that this young man didn't utilize his concept, and had only purely used his origin energy. The strength of 3 ancient horned dragons. This was the symbol of the 2nd level void initiation stage. This young man was a void initiation stage expert. Whoosh! As if a gust of wind had blown by, Zhang Shouyang appeared before Shadow in the blink of an eye. Aside from that, at this moment, besides Shadow and Xian, not one of the other 10+ people were alive. They were all killed by Zhang Shouyang. Since the moment Zhang Shouyang made a move to his appearance before the old man, he'd only used the time of one breath. Zhang Shouyang used his actions to show how terrifying a void initiation stage expert was. So strong. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, and his gaze contained yearning mixed within, a yearning towards the void initiation stage. No. Meanwhile, Xian, who was dumbstruck in the distance, had finally recovered from her shock, and her face was deathly pale as she gazed at the corpses that covered the ground. Her legs went limp, collapsing onto the ground. Her pair of triangular eyes flickered with boundless terror and despair. Today, the reason she'd appeared here was because she wanted to see Duan Lingtian killed with her own 2 eyes. She'd even resolved in her heart that once Duan Lingtian was killed by the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, she would tear Duan Lingtian's corpse to 10,000 pieces, as only then would she be able to vent the hatred in her heart. But now, all this was bound to become her imagination. Why is it like this? Why does Duan Lingtian have such formidable support by his side? Why? The heavens are unjust. The heavens are unjust. Xian clenched her fist tightly, and her triangular eyes flickered with unwillingness. Her distorted and hideous features were now completely knotted together. Zhang Shouyang's gaze descended onto Shadow, and he asked with a calm tone. You said earlier that you want to kill my brother. This caused Shadow's face to go deathly pale from fright, and his body trembled. 358 Chapter 359, Annihilated. Sha Do took a deep breath, then looked at Zhang Shouyang and asked. Sir, who exactly are you? Subsequently, he suppressed the fear within his heart as he slowly said, perhaps, the clan or sect that you're from has some friendly relationship with my Jade Magnolia Trading Company. The way he spoke contained a slight sense of yielding. Jade Magnolia Trading Company. The corners of Zhang Shouyang's mouth held a trace of disdain as he said indifferently, I'm sorry, but I've never heard of it. Never heard of it? Sha Do's face instantly flushed red, as if his throat was choked by someone. He naturally thought that Zhang Shouyang had said this intentionally. Although the Jade Magnolia Trading Company couldn't be considered the top trading company within the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it was still known far and wide. Duan Lingtian, however, wasn't surprised. According to his knowledge, although Zhang Shouyang stayed in the ancient city of Everlast for a few years, besides having gained some understanding of the 7 great sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he didn't take notice of any other powers. Suddenly, whoosh, the 3 ancient horned dragons appeared above Zhang Shouyang once again, then bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they hovered down, bringing about an extremely oppressive feeling to others. Sha Do's face went deathly pale when he saw this, and his eyes emitted dread. Since you kept saying you want to kill my brother, then I'll send you off, and remove all future worries for my brother. Zhang Shouyang spoke word for word, and every word he spoke seemed to transform into a sledgehammer that smashed onto Sha Do's chest, causing Sha Do's expression to become even paler. In the end, it completely shattered Sha Do's will to fight. Thump, Sha Do's body dropped with a thump. He'd actually knelt on the floor and lowered his noble head, then he said with a slightly trembling voice. Spare me, Lord, I was only kidding earlier, that unfilial son of mine actually dare defend the brother of you, Lord. He deserves death even if he died 100 times. Lord, it's I who didn't teach my son well, it's I who didn't teach my son well. Currently, Sha Do was devoid of the arrogance of a 6th-level void-prying stage martial artist and the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. Presently, he was like a dog that wagged its tail as it begged. In the face of death, he'd completely abandoned his honor. Just for the sake of survival. Vice President Sha Do, this isn't what you said earlier. Ridicule appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth, and he had heartfelt disdain for Sha Do. A dignified 6th-level void-prying stage martial artist and the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company had actually abandoned his honor as a man and a martial artist, all for the sake of survival. A person like this was pitiable. When he heard Duan Lingtian, Sha Do suppressed the flames of rage deep within his heart that would burst out at any moment, and he said in panic, Brother Duan, I was only joking earlier, I was just joking with you, really, really. Joking. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold, then laughed strangely. Since Vice President Sha Do liked to joke, Big Brother Zhang, I think you can play a joke with Vice President Sha Do. I think Vice President Sha Do ought to not mind. Right, Vice President Sha Do? Yes, yes. Sha Do nodded in panic, he didn't dare say no at this moment. Zhang Shouyang heard Duan Lingtian and perceived Duan Lingtian's intentions, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl into a slight smile. Vice President Sha Do, right? Zhang Shouyang asked indifferently. Lord, just call me Sha Do, just call me Sha Do. Sha Do had a panicked expression and had lost himself. You like to play jokes, right? Zhang Shouyang asked again. Yes, yes. Sha Do didn't dare hesitate and nodded in a hurry. Very good. Zhang Shouyang nodded, then raised his hand to press it onto Sha Do's head, and at the same time that Sha Do's body shivered, he said slowly, then I'll play a joke with you, let's see if your head will explode when I slightly exert some origin energy. Sha Do was already shaking with fright, and when he heard Zhang Shouyang, he lost his mind and directly fell onto the ground as he said in a trembling voice. Spare me, Lord, I can't take this joke, I can't. HMPH. Zhang Shouyang's gaze went cold, and lost any intention of continuing to tease Sha Do, then his origin energy skyrocketed in his right hand. No, Sha Do's eyes were sharp and just happened to see this scene, at the same time that his face went pale, his limbs pushed against the ground and his body trembled before seeming to transform into an eagle. He flashed off, desiring to flee. In the sky, 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed on in tow. But, would he be able to flee? Want to flee? The corners of Zhang Shouyang's mouth curled into a sneer, and in almost an instant, a layer of an earthen yellow light barrier had appeared on the surface of his body. Above him, 6 ancient horned dragon silhouettes fought for the lead position as they fluttered out. Whoosh! In Duan Lingtian's vision, Zhang Shouyang's body completely merged with the earth in an instant before disappearing on the spot. At the same time that Zhang Shouyang, who'd utilized his third-level earth concept, had disappeared before Duan Lingtian's eyes, he'd appeared over 10 meters away to easily obstruct Shadow, who wanted to flee. Bang! Zhang Shouyang's palm descended with skyrocketing origin energy, and on the corners of the origin energy, traces of an earthen yellow halo could be vaguely seen. Obviously, Zhang Shouyang had utilized the third-level earth concept in this strike. Bang! The palm strike that contained the strength of 6 ancient horned dragons had descended onto Shadow's chest, and it emitted an enormous bang. Instantly, Shadow followed in the footsteps of the Shi clan's patriarch, Shi Li. His entire body exploded, transforming into pieces of flesh that covered the sky before scattering all over the ground. Utterly dead, Shi Yan. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian heard a delicate shout sound out, and subsequently, Li Fei, who sat before him, had flashed out. Only now did Duan Lingtian notice that Shi Yan was actually trying to flee. Whoosh! Li Fei's figure flashed out gracefully, and caught up with Shi Yan in the blink of an eye. Then the 3-foot-long blade in her hand was sent into Shi Yan's back, passing straight through. Li Fei's gaze was extremely calm as she watched Shi Yan die before her eyes. Shi Yan deserved death. The 10+ people that approached menacingly earlier were now scattered all over the place, dead. It's just nice for me to return this Fergana horse to the two of you. As Zhang Shouyang spoke, he led 2 of the Fergana horses that were the spoils of the battle over, then he and Wang Chong got on one each. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian and Li Fei rode 2 Fergana horses separately. The 4 of them galloped towards the 7-star sword sect. The incident that happened earlier didn't affect the mood of Duan Lingtian's group of 4, and all of them chatted happily as they rode their Fergana horses forward slowly. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Unknowingly, the 4 of them had arrived at the foot of the 7-star sword sect's Dubi Peak. Outside the 7-star sword sect. Brother Lingtian, sister-in-law, until we meet again. Zhang Shouyang lightly smiled to Duan Lingtian and Li Fei as he bid his farewells. Until we meet again. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled and nodded as well. Big sister Wang Chong, if you and big brother Zhang are free in the future, then you must come visit me. Li Fei had a reluctant expression as she looked at Wang Chong. Of course. Wang Chong lightly nodded, and her eyes contained reluctance. When they saw the figures of Zhang Shouyang and Wang Chong disappear into the distance, Duan Lingtian and Li Fei withdrew their gazes, then turned their horses around to head towards the stables in the sect. The 2 of them had only just entered the stables when they saw a young man come greet them. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, senior sister Li Fei. It was Mo Yu. After a year of not seeing each other, Mo Yu had become much more mature. Mo Yu, you've broken through to the 3rd level of the Origin Core stage. Duan Lingtian glanced at Mo Yu with a surprised expression. I remember that you were only at the 1st level of the Origin Core stage 1 year ago, how'd you advance so quickly? Senior brother Duan Lingtian, you're able to perceive my cultivation. Mo Yu was dumbstruck. Senior brother Duan Lingtian looked travel-worn and had obviously just returned from outside the sect, so it was impossible for Duan Lingtian to know of his current cultivation. In other words, senior brother Duan Lingtian had perceived it. Duan Lingtian gave Mo Yu a mysterious smile in return, then descended from his horse and supported Li Fei down before saying to Mo Yu, we'll leave our horses to you, right? Take this, it's a small gift from me. Duan Lingtian took out a stack of silver as he spoke. It was an entire 1 million silver, and he passed it to Mo Yu. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, I can't take this. Mo Yu shook his head then smiled honestly. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Mo Yu, then asked curiously. Aren't you taking care of the horses here and being a horsekeeper all for the sake of earning a little bit more pay? This money is sufficient to be equal to the pay you get from working here for many years, why do you not want it? Mo Yu rubbed the back of his head. My mother told me that I have to rely on my own hard work to earn money, no gains without pains. Take it, just take it to be the salary for taking care of our Fergana horses, Duan Lingtian said again. When he saw Mo Yu still not receiving it, he immediately glared. If you don't take it, then you're looking down on me. When Mo Yu saw Duan Lingtian speaking up to this extent, he could only receive it, and he had an expression of gratitude. Thank you, senior brother Duan Lingtian. Your natural talent isn't bad, work hard, I hope that I have the chance to see the day you show extraordinary results. Duan Lingtian nodded and smiled to Mo Yu, then he took Li Fei's hand and left the stables before following along the mountain path to head up Dubi Peak. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, I'll surely not let you down. Mo Yu had a serious expression as he held the silver in his hands tightly, his gaze firm like iron. Duan Lingtian sent Li Fei to the side of the chain bridge that led to Alcade Peak, then helped Li Fei straighten out her lovely hair before saying in a gentle voice, "Little Fei, go back to your master. I've taken you away for more than a year and Elder Bai is surely anxiously by now. We've hurried on our journey for half the day and you're already tired, so have a good rest." Okay, Li Fei obediently nodded, then stepped onto the chain bridge and left with a slow pace. Duan Lingtian withdrew his gaze when he saw Li Fei's figure disappear before his eyes. He didn't return to Megrez Peak, but instead headed to the top of Dubi Peak. There were things he had to face sooner or later. Lu Shizhe. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a wisp of a cold smile. After he arrived at the trade hall at the peak of Dubi Peak, Duan Lingtian didn't find any trace of Lu Shizhe, so he went close to an inner court disciple and asked, "Senior brother, do you know where Lu Shizhe cultivates at?" This inner court disciple turned his head around, and his pupils constricted when he saw Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian. He'd obviously recognized Duan Lingtian. The inner court disciple took a deep breath. That day, he was present when Duan Lingtian was heavily injured and knocked out by Lu Shizhe. Presently, Duan Lingtian had vanished for a year, and now took the initiative to look for Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian's objective was apparent: to seek revenge from Lu Shizhe. 359 Chapter 360, The Shameless Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian, you, the inner court disciple hadn't even finished speaking when his pupils constricted and his gaze shot behind Duan Lingtian as if he'd seen something that struck fear into him. Subsequently, before Duan Lingtian could even react, he'd walked off in panic. It was like if he stood a moment longer by Duan Lingtian's side, he would encounter some sort of disaster. The actions of the inner court disciple caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned, then he turned around. When his gaze shot into the distance, he'd noticed two people just happened to be walking shoulder to shoulder as they ascended the top of Dubi Peak. Lu Shizhe, I didn't even have to do anything and luck brought you to me. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a cold smile. The people that had appeared before him now were precisely Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian. Meanwhile, Lu Shizhe and Fan Jian had noticed Duan Lingtian as well, and after they walked over, Lu Shiji's gaze contained frightful coldness as he said in a cold and indifferent voice, "Duan Lingtian." In the past year, he hadn't heard of any news about Duan Lingtian, so he knew that Duan Lingtian was still outside the sect and had not returned. The longer it was like this, the more uneasy he felt in his heart. He was afraid that Duan Lingtian would stay outside the sect for too long, and when he returned, Duan Lingtian's cultivation would far surpass him. After all, Duan Lingtian's natural talent was out there for all to see. Once Duan Lingtian matured in another 2 or 3 years, it was impossible for him to be Duan Lingtian's match. Now that he saw Duan Lingtian had returned, at the same time that he was relieved in his heart, he once again aroused killing intent towards Duan Lingtian. As far as he was concerned, only by killing Duan Lingtian would he be able to remove any future worries. Lu Shizhe. When faced with Lu Shiji's provocations, Duan Lingtian's reaction was no different to Lu Shizhe and his eyes emitted a frightful cold light. He descended the peak of Dubi Peak today precisely for the sake of looking for Lu Shizhe. Now, Lu Shizhe had delivered himself into Duan Lingtian's hands, and allowed him to save some effort. Fan Jian borrowed the might of Lu Shizhe to sneer and say, "HMPH. Duan Lingtian, you were heavily injured and knocked out by my big brother Lu the last time, and you still dare be so arrogant before my big brother Lu today." Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian calmly swept Fan Jian with his gaze, and an expression of a ridiculing smile jumped about in his eyes. "Do you think that with this Lu Shizhe present, I'm unable to do anything to you?" "You." Fan Jian's face went slightly pale and he couldn't refrain from taking 2 steps back, as he was extremely afraid that Duan Lingtian would suddenly attack him. Right when Duan Lingtian intended to ridicule Fan Jian, his acute spiritual force suddenly trembled. He noticed that Lu Shizhe had once again moved to attack him in surprise, as Lu Shizhe seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind that swept over to him. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold and his face sank, then his legs lightly shook as he barely dodged Lu Shiji's palm strike. Whoosh! Lu Shiji's palm strike practically brushed Duan Lingtian's clothes as it flashed by. Duan Lingtian, your natural talent and not bad indeed. It has only been a year and you've actually already broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage. As he gazed at the 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes that appeared above Duan Lingtian, the corners of Lu Shiji's mouth curled into a strange smile. He'd launched a surprise attack on Duan Lingtian only for the sake of sounding him out. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Duan Lingtian to dodge. Do you think that everyone is like you, not advancing a shred after a year? Duan Lingtian said in disdain. 9th level of the origin core stage. Duan Lingtian and Lu Shiji's conflict created quite a commotion. Before long, the crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples that were nearby the trade hall on the peak of Dubi Peak had all surrounded over to watch the scene unfold. It's Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian vanished for a year and has finally returned. Duan Lingtian has actually broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage. His natural talent is truly monstrous. Yeah, with such natural talent, surpassing senior brother Lu Shizhe in another year or two isn't difficult. Looks like senior brother Lu Shizhe has really brought a great calamity upon himself. The crowd of inner court disciples whispered in discussion. As far as they were concerned, so long as Duan Lingtian didn't ascend to the life and death arena and continued to cultivate properly for another year or two, then at that time, he would absolutely be able to easily destroy Lu Shizhe. Now, he was still slightly lacking. The words of the inner court disciples entered into Lu Shiji's ears and caused his face to sink, and his eyes emitted frightful cold lights. The thing he was most afraid of was exactly this. Duan Lingtian. Lu Shiji's ghastly gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian as he said in a low voice. I've heard since long ago about your ability to defeat a stronger opponent with a weaker strength. Now that you've broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage, I presume you wouldn't be afraid even against a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist, right? Duan Lingtian said indifferently when he heard Lu Shifei, first-level nascent soul stage martial artist. I don't know about anyone else, but if it's you, Lu Shizhe, then I'm naturally unafraid. Good. Lu Shizhe started laughing in an arrogant and unrestrained manner. Since it's like that, then do you, Duan Lingtian, dare to battle me, Lu Shizhe, on the life and death arena until only one remains. Life and death arena. The surrounding crowd of spectating inner court disciples burst into an uproar when they heard Lu Shizhe. Duan Lingtian's brows knit. Why should I ascend the life and death arena with you? Lu Shizhe frowned, then took a step forward as he provoked with an icy cold voice, what? You, Duan Lingtian, the famous genius in the martial Tao of our 7-star sword sect, the genius in the martial Tao that can defeat a stronger opponent with a weaker cultivation, now that you've broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage, you still don't dare ascend the life and death arena with me, a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist. Earlier, who was it that said he wasn't afraid of me, this first-level nascent soul stage martial artist? What, now that you've heard me challenge you to ascend the life and death arena, you're afraid? As he looked at Duan Lingtian, whose expression became unsightly by the moment, the ridicule on the corners of Lu Shiji's mouth became even denser. Looks like some people are only good at boasting, yet at the critical moment, they're instead poo *** wise. Big brother Lu, besides being good at boasting, what else is this Duan Lingtian good at? What rare genius in the martial Tao of our 7-star sword sect? According to me, he's complete trash and not worthy of being mentioned. Fan Jian matched Lu Shizhe at the right moment and trampled on Duan Lingtian's honor. Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian's eyes seemed as if they would light up in flames as he gazed at Fan Jian and said coldly, you said I'm good at boasting. Okay, I, Duan Lingtian, the trash in your eyes, challenge you to a battle on the life and death arena. Do you dare? Duan Lingtian's words caused all the inner court disciples who were present to look at Fan Jian with a strange gaze. Right, you, Fan Jian, said that Duan Lingtian is only good at boasting, and is trash that can't do anything else. Now, Duan Lingtian challenged you to a battle in the life and death arena. Do you dare? Duan Lingtian's words caused Fan Jian to be speechless. Not to mention Duan Lingtian had already broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage now. Even if it was a year ago, he still felt he wasn't a match for Duan Lingtian who hadn't broken through yet. How would he dare accept Duan Lingtian's challenge to ascend the life and death arena? What? Don't dare. The gaze Duan Lingtian shot at Fan Jian carried an extra sense of disdain and contempt. You, Fan Jian, said that besides being good at boasting, I'm good for nothing else, and you even said that I, Duan Ling Tian, am trash. Now, you don't even dare to agree to the life and death arena challenge of a trash like me. Are you telling everyone present that you, Fan Jian, are even inferior to trash? You, Fan Jian, are even inferior to trash. Duan Ling Tian's words entered into Fan Jian's ears and caused his face to flush red. He gnashed his teeth and wished for nothing more than to agree to Duan Ling Tian's challenge and ascend the life and death area to battle Duan Ling Tian. In the end, his reason still defeated his impulse. Fan Jian sneered when he noticed the gazes of the surrounding crowd of inner court disciples that became more and strange. Duan Ling Tian, don't change the topic. Today, it's Big Brother Lu that invited you to battle on the life and death arena first. If you dare agree to Big Brother Lu's challenge, then so what if I, Fan Jian, agree to your challenge? Sure enough, Fan Jian's words caused a wave of disdain. Fan Jian is too shameless. He clearly knows that it's impossible for Duan Ling Tian to be a match for senior brother Lu Shijie, but he's still instigating Duan Ling Tian to agree to Lu Shijie's challenge. Exactly, once Duan Ling Tian agrees to Lu Shijie's challenge, the one to die would surely be Duan Ling Tian. Then even if he agreed to Duan Ling Tian's challenge, at that time, it would already be impossible for Duan Ling Tian to survive. In the end, he completely doesn't need to battle Duan Ling Tian on the life and death arena. If I'm Duan Ling Tian, I will request to first fight Fan Jian on the life and death arena, then battle Lu Shijie, and see if this Fan Jian dares or not. The crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples discussed animatedly. What, Duan Ling Tian, weren't you extremely arrogant earlier? Don't dare now. Fan Jian paid no attention to the surrounding discussion, using a ridiculing gaze to stare at Duan Ling Tian as he provoked. Fan Jian, Duan Ling Tian sneered. I can agree to your request, but the suggestion of one of the inner court senior brothers wasn't bad. So long as you agree to my challenge, I can agree to Lu Shijie's challenge, but I, Duan Ling Tian, want to battle you, Fan Jian, on the life and death arena first. After the two of us battle, I'll battle Lu Shijie on the life and death arena. Duan Ling Tian glanced deeply at Fan Jian. You. Fan Jian's face sank and he glared at the inner court disciple that brought this suggestion forward, then his gaze descended onto Duan Ling Tian once again. Duan Ling Tian, don't forget that it was Big Brother Lu who challenged you first today. First come first serve. I, Fan Jian, won't fight with Big Brother Lu. Haha, Duan Ling Tian couldn't refrain from laughing. Fan Jian, in my entire life, I've seen many shameless people, but I've never seen a person as shameless as you. They can't hold a candle to you. Duan Ling Tian's words that seemed like praise, had instead caused Fan Jian to feel it to be incomparably unpleasant to the ear when he heard it. The surrounding crowd of inner court disciples couldn't help but burst out laughing. They deeply agreed with what Duan Ling Tian said. If you don't dare, then say it. But you're still posing to be honorable here. Do you, Fan Jian, really think that the other disciples present here are unable to perceive your cowardice? Laughable. The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth curled into a slightly ridiculing smile as he spoke with sharp words. Duan Ling Tian, looks like you don't dare accept the challenge of Big Brother Lu. Fan Jian's face was incomparably gloomy as he ridiculed in return. Since it's like this, then there's no need for I, Fan Jian, to agree to the challenge of a cowardly person. However, Duan Ling Tian, do you really think that Big Brother Lu can't do anything to you if you don't ascend the life and death arena?